The laptop screen glowed blue in the darkness of the kitchen. 4:47 in the morning on August 15th, 2012, and Robert Hendricks sat alone at the table where his grandfather had eaten breakfast before heading to the fields 70 years earlier. Same house, same land, different numbers on the screen. The USDA report had updated at midnight. Rob had been checking it every 2 hours since then, hoping the projections might change. They hadn't. Corn yield forecast for Beetle County, South Dakota, 98 bushels per acre. Last year it had been 165. He reached for the coffee cup Linda had left for him before going back to bed. Cold now. He drank it anyway. The spreadsheet on the screen told a story that no amount of coffee could fix. 2,800 acres of corn and soybeans. 59 years old. Fourth generation on this land. The numbers didn't care about any of that. His fingers moved across the keyboard, updating the calculations he'd already run a dozen times. Expected gross revenue with 98 bushel yield at current corn prices of $8.20 per bushel. The drought had done something perverse to the markets, destroyed the crop but drove prices to record highs. Supply and demand in its purest, cruelest form. $2.24 million gross. That number looked good until you started subtracting. Seed costs already paid back in March. Fertilizer locked in last November when prices seemed reasonable. Fuel. Insurance. The operating loan from First Dakota National, $340,000, due October 15th. The equipment loan on the John Deere S680 combine, $280,000 still owed on a machine that had cost $385,000 new in 2010. Rob wrote the final number on the legal pad next to the laptop. Negative $250,000, $250,000 short. Not because he'd made bad decisions, not because he'd been lazy or stupid or reckless, because it hadn't rained. Outside the kitchen window, the sky was beginning to lighten. August in South Dakota meant sunrise around 6:15, but the lights started creeping in earlier than that. Rob could see the shape of his shop building across the gravel drive, the silhouette of the grain bins beyond that. Everything he'd built, everything his father had built, everything his grandfather had homesteaded when this was still prairie. He closed the laptop, stood, walked to the window. The thermometer mounted outside read 68 degrees. By afternoon, it would hit 97. The forecast called for 38 consecutive days above 95 degrees. That was a record. The corn didn't care that it was a record. The corn was dying in the field. Linda appeared in his doorway, hair pulled back, wearing the old Iowa State sweatshirt she'd had since college. 57 years old, and she still looked like the girl he'd married 34 years ago. Tired now, though. They were both tired. "You didn't sleep," she said. Rob shook his head, ran the numbers again. "And?" "Same answer. We're short." She crossed to the coffee maker, poured 2 fresh cups, brought one to him. They stood together at the window, watching the light grow across land that had been in his family since 1928. "How short?" Linda asked. 250. Maybe more if yields come in lower than USDA projects. She was quiet for a long moment, then, "What are our options?" Rob had been asking himself that question for 3 weeks. Sell some land, take on a second mortgage, apply for an FSA emergency loan, reduce operating costs for next year. Every option led to the same place, just at different speeds. Smaller, tighter, less viable. One more step toward what everyone in agriculture knew was coming, but nobody wanted to say out loud. Consolidation. The end of the family farm is anything more than a nostalgic idea. "I need to talk to Greg Morrison," Rob said. "See if the bank will extend the note." Linda set her coffee cup on the counter. Greg Morrison. They'd known him for 12 years, watched his kids play baseball, shared a lane at the bowling alley every Thursday night during winter. Greg was a good man. Greg also had a board of directors and a loan portfolio and regulatory requirements that didn't care about bowling leagues. "When?" Linda asked. "This morning. I'll call when the bank opens." She nodded, picked up her coffee again. "What do you need from me?" "Just keep the books current. We'll need everything documented if we're asking for an extension." Rob turned from the window, looked at his wife, 34 years. She'd been beside him through every decision, every drought, every good year and bad. She'd kept the books, raised their son, worked as a nurse for 12 years to provide health insurance when commodity prices were in the basement. She'd never once suggested he should quit. Never once said maybe her father had been right when he told her not to marry a farmer. We'll figure it out, he said. Linda met his eyes. Will we? He didn't answer because he didn't know. The sun broke the horizon at 6:17. Rob was already in the truck, driving the section roads to check the corn. 2,800 acres divided among 12 different fields, some his land, some leased. The drought had hit all of it, but not evenly. The south quarter, 640 acres of his best ground near Mud Creek, looked better than the rest. Still short, still stressed, but the corn there might make 115, 120 bushels to the acre. The North 8, 1,000 acres of rolling ground he'd bought in 2003, looked like a disaster. 70, 80 bushels at best. Corn plants stood 4 feet tall instead of 8. Ears half filled, leaves curled against moisture loss, giving the whole field a gray cast instead of the deep green it should have been in mid-August. Rob stopped the truck at the edge of the North 8, killed the engine, got out. The silence was total except for the wind moving through the stunted corn. No birds, no insects. Even the ecosystem understood there was nothing here worth staying for. He walked into the field, pulled an ear from the closest stalk, peeled back the husk. The kernels were there, small and hard, rows stopping 2/3 of the way to the tip. 17, 18 rows around. Should have been 20, 22. Each missing row was lost yield, lost revenue, lost equity. Rob dropped the ear, walked back to the truck. He'd seen enough. The USDA numbers were optimistic. At 9:03, he called First Dakota National from the truck, parked in the shade of the cottonwoods along Mud Creek. The receptionist put him through to Greg Morrison immediately. Rob, morning. What can I do for you? Greg's voice was professional, friendly. It was the voice of a man who knew why you were calling before you said it. Need to come in and talk about my operating note, Rob said. See about getting an extension on the October payment. Silence on the line. Then, yeah, I figured. You're not the first call I've gotten this week. Can you come in this afternoon, say 2 o'clock? I'll be there. Rob, I want to be straight with you. It's not going to be easy. The board is watching the portfolio closely. 2012 is hurting everyone. I know, but I need to try. See you at 2. The line went dead. Rob sat in the truck, windows down, hot air blowing through. He could hear the creek running low over rocks. 30 feet across in a wet year, now maybe 8. The water was the color of coffee. Upstream, someone's topsoil was washing away, probably his own. He thought about calling Michael, his son. 32 years old, mechanical engineer in Minneapolis. Good job, good salary, good future. Michael, who'd grown up on this farm, driven tractors at 12, run combines at 16, then gone to Iowa State and never come back except for Christmas and the occasional weekend. Michael, who'd said gently but clearly that he didn't want to farm, that the economics didn't work, that he'd rather build things that stayed built instead of planting crops that might or might not grow. Rob didn't call. What would he say? Your old man's about to lose the farm. Want to come save it? No, Michael had his own life. That's what Rob had wanted for him. The meeting at First Dakota National lasted 40 minutes. Greg Morrison sat across the desk in his small office, windows looking out on Main Street in Huron. Population 12,600. County seat. Biggest town in Beetle County. Rob had been coming to this bank for 37 years, first with his father, then alone. Greg laid out the situation with the kind of practiced gentleness that came from delivering bad news frequently. The bank's agricultural portfolio had taken significant losses in 2012. Federal regulators were requiring tighter lending standards. The board had voted to require all operating loans be reduced by 15% for 2013 as a risk management measure. Rob did the math in his head. His current operating line was $340,000. 15% reduction meant $289,000 for next year. His input costs, seed and fertilizer already contracted for 2013, were $305,000 before he even planted. Greg, I need at least $400,000 to operate next year, Rob said. Even if I reduce acres, I've got minimum costs I can't get under. I understand, but the board decision is final. I pushed back, Rob. I did. They wouldn't budge. So what are my options? Greg slid a folder across the desk. Inside were loan modification papers, refinancing options. The language was dense, but the meaning was clear. He could extend his current debt, but only if he put up additional collateral. More land, more equipment, more of everything he'd already mortgaged. There's another option, Greg said quietly. We've had several farmers in your situation sell to Heartland Agricultural Partners. They're acquiring land in the county. They'd likely make you an offer. Heartland Agricultural Partners, corporate farm out of Sioux Falls, 50,000 acres across eastern South Dakota. They bought family farms, consolidated them, operated them with hired managers and GPS-guided equipment and economies of scale that individual farmers couldn't match. I'm not selling, Rob said. Greg nodded. I figured you'd say that, but Rob, I need you to think about this realistically. You're 59, you've got good equity in the land. You could sell, clear your debts, retire comfortably. Maybe work for Heartland as an operator if you wanted to keep farming. I've been farming this ground for 41 years. My father for 39 before that. My grandfather homesteaded it. I know. But the economics have changed. It's not about how hard you work anymore. Rob stood, picked up the folder. I'll look at these options, but I'm not selling, not yet. He drove home in silence. Linda met him at the door. How bad? She asked. Bad. They sat at the kitchen table. Rob explained the 15% reduction in operating credit, the requirement for additional collateral, the suggestion to sell. Linda listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "We need to talk to Michael." Rob shook his head. He's got his own life. He's got a right to know. This is his inheritance. There might not be an inheritance. Linda reached across the table, took his hand. Then he definitely has a right to know. The corn didn't stop dying while they figured out their options. By late August, the fields had taken on the exhausted look of crops that had given up. The leaves were brown at the edges, curling inward. The stalks stood but barely. Walking through the rows, Rob could hear them rustling in the wind, a papery sound like old documents crumbling. He'd been farming long enough to know what 98-bushel corn looked like in August. This was going to be worse. 85, maybe 90 if he was lucky. Every bushel below projection was another $7, $8 loss per acre. Multiply that by 2,800 acres and the number became crushing. On September 3rd, Michael drove down from Minneapolis. He'd called 2 days earlier, said he needed to talk. Rob suspected Linda had reached out to him. That was fine. They'd always been close, mother and son. Michael had inherited her analytical mind, her ability to see problems clearly and work through them methodically. From Rob, he'd gotten the love of land and the stubbornness to keep working when logic said to quit. They met in the shop, the big metal building where Rob kept his equipment. The John Deere S680 combine sat in the center bay, gleaming green and yellow paint. 353 horsepower, 12-row corn head folded up for storage. $400,000 worth of machine, financed at 6.2% over 7 years. It was the kind of combine you bought when you believed the future would be better than the past. Michael walked around it slowly, hands in his pockets. He was tall like Rob, but leaner. Didn't have the weathered look yet. Office work kept you soft. This is a serious machine, Michael said. Does the job when there's a crop to harvest. Dad, Mom told me about the bank meeting. Rob had figured as much. What else did she tell you? That you're short $250 this year. That the bank's cutting your operating line for next year. That you're looking at selling land or taking on more debt. That about covers it. Michael turned to face him. And you didn't think to call me? What was I going to say? Come bail out your old man? I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I'm 32. I have a career, savings. I could help. Rob felt something tight in his chest. Pride, maybe. Or shame. It was hard to tell the difference sometimes. Michael, you make what? $87,000 a year as an engineer? 92, actually. Got a raise in June. Good. That's good. You got benefits, retirement plan, stability. You worked hard for that. So did you. And look where it got me. Rob gestured at the combine, the shop, the fields visible through the open door. All of this might be gone in a year. I'm not dragging you into that. Michael sat on an overturned bucket, looked at his father. What if I want to be dragged in? You don't. How do you know? Because I know what farming takes now. It's not like when I started. Margins are thinner, inputs cost more, equipment costs more, land costs more. You need $3 million in equity just to have a chance. And even then, one bad year, he trailed off. One bad year, like 2012. What are you going to do? Michael asked. Harvest what's there. Sell it. See where we stand. Talk to the bank again. Linda and I have been going over the numbers. If we plant fewer acres next year, reduce our operating costs, We might be able to make it work. For how long? Rob didn't answer because he didn't know. Maybe a year, maybe 5, maybe until the next drought or the next commodity price crash or the next time the bank tightened requirements. Farming had become a game of survival, and the rules kept changing. They walked out of the shop together, stood in the yard, looking at the cornfields stretching away in every direction. The sun was high and brutal, no clouds. The forecast called for clear skies through the end of the month. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Michael said. "Sure. Why do you keep doing this?" Rob was quiet. It was a question he'd been asking himself more often lately. The easy answer was, because it's what I know. Because it's what my father did and his father before him. Because the land is in my blood. But those were nostalgic answers. Hallmark card answers. The real answer was harder. "Because I don't know how to do anything else," Rob said finally. "And because quitting feels like failing everyone who came before me. Even if staying means losing everything?" Rob looked at his son. Even then, Michael flew back to Minneapolis the next morning. Before he left, standing by his car in the driveway, he said, "Dad, if you need help, call me. I mean it." Rob nodded, shook his son's hand, watched him drive away. Linda came out to stand beside him. "You should have told him the whole truth," she said. "What truth?" "That you're scared." Rob didn't answer because she was right. September arrived with no relief. The heat continued. The drought continued. The corn stood in the fields, waiting to be harvested, and Rob began making preparations. The S680 needed servicing. He spent 3 days going through it, changed the engine oil and filters, checked the hydraulic system, inspected every belt, every chain, every bearing. The concaves and sieves needed adjustment for the smaller, harder kernels the drought had produced. He set the concave clearance tighter than normal, adjusted the fan speed on the cleaning shoe. The work was familiar, methodical. There was comfort in it. This he could control. The weather he couldn't. The markets he couldn't. The bank he couldn't. But he could make sure his equipment was ready. On September 8th, he was in the South Quarter checking corn moisture. The kernels needed to dry down to 15% moisture before they could be stored safely. Too wet, and they'd mold in the bin. The elevator would dock him heavy for high moisture corn, 35 cents per bushel for every point over 15. At current prices, that was real money. The truck radio was tuned to South Dakota Public Radio. A reporter was doing a story on the national drought impact. Rob listened with half attention while he snapped ears from stalks, checking kernel fill. USDA projects 2012 corn production at 10.8 billion bushels, the reporter said, down 13% from 2011. This is the worst drought since 1988. Federal crop insurance is expected to pay out $16 billion. The highest ever. Rob turned off the radio, sat in the truck cab. The numbers spun through his head. $16 billion in crop insurance payouts. That sounded like a lot until you remembered how many farmers were filing claims. And insurance only covered 75% of your guaranteed yield. The rest was just loss. He thought about next year. Even if 2013 was a perfect growing season, input costs were going to rise. They always did after a drought year. Seed companies and fertilizer suppliers and equipment manufacturers all saw the insurance payouts and adjusted their prices accordingly. The insurance covered this year's loss, but it created next year's cost structure. Rob started the truck, drove back to the house. He needed to talk to Linda. She was in the office, the small room off the kitchen where she kept the farm's books. 34 years of ledgers and receipts and tax returns. The computer was newer, but the filing cabinets were the same ones Rob's mother had used. "We need to call Michael," Rob said from the doorway. Linda looked up, took off her reading glasses. "Why?" "Because I think I know what's coming, and I think we need to make a decision before it gets worse." That night, they called Michael on video chat. He answered from his apartment in Minneapolis. Rob could see the neat, modern space behind him. Clean walls, new furniture, everything in its place. The opposite of a farmhouse where tools and papers and life accumulated in layers. "Michael, your mother and I have been talking," Rob started, "about the farm, about what comes next." "Okay," Michael said carefully. "The drought this year isn't just a drought, it's a reset. Crop insurance will pay out, but input costs are going to spike next year. The bank is tightening credit. Land values might drop if enough farmers sell. We're looking at a structural shift in the economics." Michael nodded. "I've been reading about it. Agricultural economists are saying this could accelerate consolidation." "It will," Rob said, which means we have decisions to make. Linda leaned into the camera frame. We wanted you to know what we're thinking before we decide anything. I appreciate that, Michael said. What are your options? Rob laid it out. They could try to operate smaller, reduce acres, minimize debt. They could sell some land to pay down loans and operate on what was left. They could sell everything, clear out, retire. Or they could try something different. What's different? Michael asked. Linda spoke up. What if you came back? Not to farm the way your father farms, but to run it like a business. We incorporate. You handle the business side, marketing, risk management, technology. Your father handles operations. We split ownership. Make it sustainable. Michael was quiet. On the screen, Rob could see him thinking. Processing. That analytical mind working through scenarios. How would that work financially, Michael asked. We'd have to restructure everything, Linda said. Reduce debt, modernize operations, probably plant fewer acres at first. Your father and I would take salaries instead of just living off profit. You'd have a stake in the operation. I'd have to leave my job, Michael said. Yes. Move back. Yes. Take on all the risk of farming. Yes, Rob said, which is why I don't think you should do it. Michael looked at his father through the screen. Why not? Because farming almost broke me this year. And I've been doing it my whole life. I know what it costs. Not just money, everything. Your time, your health, your peace of mind. I watched my father age 10 years during the farm crisis in the 80s. I don't want that for you. But you're still doing it, Michael said. Because I'm too stubborn to quit. Or too stupid. I'm not sure which. Linda put her hand on Rob's shoulder. What your father is trying to say is that we want you to have a choice. A real choice. Not an obligation or a guilt trip. If you want to come back, we'll make it work. If you don't, we'll figure out another path. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, Can I think about it? Of course, Linda said. How long do I have? Rob glanced at Linda, then back at the screen. Take whatever time you need, but we'll probably need to make some decisions by spring, before planting season. Okay, Michael said. I'll think about it. After they ended the call, Rob and Linda sat at the kitchen table. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, Linda said, He's going to say no. Probably, Rob agreed. You don't sound disappointed. I'm not. I'd rather he had a good life than felt obligated to save a failing farm. It's not failing yet. Rob looked at his wife. Give it time. The corn harvest began on September 25th. Rob started on the south quarter, the best ground, the field that might actually make a decent yield. The morning was cool, 62 degrees, clear skies, perfect harvest weather. He climbed into the S680 cab at 5:30 in the morning, went through his pre-operation checklist, engine oil, hydraulic fluid, tire pressure, all the small things that could become big problems if ignored. The combine fired up with the deep rumble of 353 horsepower coming to life. Rob engaged the header, lowered it to cutting height, and started across the field. The 12-row corn head gathered stalks, pulled ears into the feeder house, fed them up into the threshing system. Inside the machine, complex mechanical choreography separated grain from cob, cleaned it, elevated it into the 300-bushel grain tank. Rob watched his yield monitor. The screen showed real-time data, ground speed, acres harvested, yield per acre. The south quarter was coming in at 106 bushels per acre. Better than expected, not good, but better. At 820 per bushel, that was 870 an acre gross. Multiplied by 640 acres, that was $557,000 before costs. He settled into the rhythm of harvest. The combine did most of the work, automated systems making constant adjustments. But Rob still had to drive, make micro decisions about ground speed and header height, watch for problems. The sound was constant, the roar of the engine and the processing, but it was a sound he'd known his whole life. There was almost meditation in it. At 10:30, his phone buzzed. Text message from Linda. Greg Morrison called. Wants to talk, says it's important. Rob kept combining. Whatever Greg wanted could wait until lunch. The weather was good. The corn was dry. Every hour he delayed was an hour of risk. But the text stayed in his mind. Important. When a banker said something was important during harvest, it was never good news. He finished the south quarter by 6:45 that evening. 640 acres in 13 hours. 1,067 separator hours on the machine now. Every hour wearing it down. bringing it closer to the point where maintenance became too expensive and you either bought new or sold out. Rob drove the combine back to the yard, parked it in the shop. His back ached. His hands were cramped from gripping the steering wheel. He was 59 years old and felt 70. Linda met him at the house, had dinner ready, pot roast and potatoes. They ate in silence. Finally, Rob asked, "What did Greg want?" Linda set down her fork. "He wants you to come in tomorrow." Wouldn't say why over the phone. "I've got the North 8 to start. Can't afford to lose harvest days." He said, "It's important, Rob. You need to go." The next morning, Rob drove to Huron. Arrived at First Dakota National at 9. Greg Morrison met him at the door, led him to his office, closed the door. That was unusual. In 12 years of banking there, they'd never closed the door. "Rob, I'm going to be straight with you," Greg said. "The board met yesterday. They're requiring all farmers with drought losses over 20% to provide updated collateral statements by October 1st. If the collateral isn't sufficient to cover outstanding loans, they're initiating foreclosure proceedings." Rob felt the floor shift under him. Foreclosure. The word hung in the air like smoke. "My collateral is my land," Rob said. 2,800 acres worth around $4 million. "Market value is soft right now," Greg said. "If we went to forced sale, we'd be lucky to get $3 million. Your total debt across all loans is $860,000. That leaves you equity, but not the ratio the board requires. They want 2-to-1 minimum. You're at 3.5 to 1. So what does that mean? It means you need to either pay down significant debt by October 1st, or we start foreclosure." "Greg, come on. We've banked together 12 years. You know I'm good for it." "I know, but it's not my decision. The regulators are breathing down our necks. They see the drought losses across the region, and they're requiring banks to shore up portfolios." I pushed back, Rob. Hard. The board wouldn't budge. Rob sat back in his chair, felt the weight of 59 years, 41 of them farming, pressing down. October 1st. That was 5 days away. "What are my options?" he asked. "Pay down $200,000 in debt, or sell enough land to get your ratio to 2-to-1, or find a buyer for the whole operation." Rob thought about this corn still standing in the fields. The North 8, the West Quarter, almost 2,000 acres still to harvest. If he sold now, he'd get nothing for standing crop. If he harvested first, he might have time to negotiate. Might. "I need until after harvest," Rob said. "The corn in the field is worth $1 million if I can get it cut and sold. I can give you until October 15th, the October payment deadline, but that's it. After that, my hands are tied." Rob stood, shook Greg's hand. The handshake felt like goodbye. He drove home slowly, took the long way through section roads that wound past fields he'd known his whole life. Some were being farmed by people he'd gone to school with. Some had already been sold to Heartland agricultural partners. Big green signs at the entrances. Heartland Ag. Others stood empty, farmsteads abandoned, houses collapsing in on themselves. This was the future. He'd been watching it come for years, told himself it wouldn't happen to him. But drought didn't care about family history. Banks didn't care about tradition. The economics had shifted underneath all of them, and the ones who couldn't shift with it were being swept away. Linda was waiting when he got home. He told her everything. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Rob's grandfather had planned crops and counted money and worried through the depression. "We need to tell Michael," Linda said. Rob nodded. "Tomorrow. Tonight I just need to think." That evening he walked out to the machine shed, stood looking at the S680 combine in the fading light. It was a beautiful machine. Precise engineering. Modern technology. Everything a farmer could want. And it might be the thing that broke him. The debt on it, combined with the operating loan and the land loans, was more than he could service in a drought year. His phone rang. Number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Hendricks? This is James Keller from Heartland Agricultural Partners. I heard you might be in a position to consider selling. I'd like to make you an offer." Word traveled fast in small counties. The bank meeting had been that morning. By evening, the corporate farms already knew. "I'm not interested," Rob said. "I understand this is difficult, but we can offer you a fair price and a smooth transition. You could even stay on as an operator if you wanted. Keep farming the land." "It wouldn't be my land." "No, sir. But it would still be farming." Rob ended the call, stood in the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear a coyote calling. The sound was lonely and wild and free. Inside the house, Linda had called Michael. Rob could see them through the window, Linda on the laptop doing video chat. He should go in. be part of the conversation. But for just a moment, he stood in the dark and let himself imagine what it would be like to walk away. Sell it all, clear the debt, retire. No more worrying about rain, no more watching crop prices, no more lying awake at night running numbers. It was a seductive thought, but it lasted only a moment, because walking away meant admitting defeat, and Robert Hendricks had never been good at that. He went inside, joined Linda at the computer. Michael's face filled the screen, concerned and young, and carrying none of the weight that sat on Rob's shoulders. "Dad," Mom told me, Michael said. "I'm sorry. Not your problem, son." "Actually," Michael said, "I've been thinking about your offer, about coming back, about restructuring the operation." Rob shook his head. "Michael, now's not the time. We're about to lose the farm." "Maybe," Michael said. "Or maybe now's exactly the time. Because if we're going to do this, if we're going to try something different, we might as well do it when we've got nothing to lose." Rob looked at Linda. She was crying quietly, looked back at the screen. "You don't know what you're saying," Rob told his son. "I know exactly what I'm saying. I've run the numbers. If we restructure as an LLC, reduce the debt load, operate lean for a couple years, we could make it work. It won't be easy, but it's possible." "And your job? Your life in Minneapolis?" "I can get another engineering job if this doesn't work, but I can't get another chance to farm with my father." The words hit Rob somewhere deep. He felt Linda's hand slip into his. "We'd have to move fast," Michael said. "I can be there by Friday. We can meet with the bank together, show them a plan." Rob wanted to say no, wanted to protect his son from the risk, from the heartbreak, from all of it. But Linda squeezed his hand and he saw in her eyes what he already knew in his heart. Sometimes you had to let people save you, even when you didn't think you deserved saving. "Okay," Rob said quietly. "Come home." The screen went dark. Linda was fully crying now. Rob held her. Outside, the wind picked up, moving through the corn that still stood in the fields, waiting. Somewhere in the darkness, the future was taking shape. What form it would take, Rob didn't know. But for the first time in weeks, he felt something other than the crushing weight of inevitability. He felt the faint, fragile possibility of hope. Michael's truck pulled into the driveway at 11:30 on Friday morning. Rob was in the shop going through maintenance on the S680 one more time before resuming harvest. He heard the engine, looked up, watched his son climb out. Michael wore jeans and a work shirt, not the khakis and button-down he usually showed up in. He'd brought tools. That said something. They stood facing each other across the concrete floor. The last time they'd been in this shop together, Rob had told Michael not to come back. Now here he was anyway. "You made good time," Rob said. "Left at 4 this morning. Couldn't sleep anyway. Your mother's in the house, making lunch." Michael nodded, looked past Rob at the combine. "That's the machine?" "That's her. S680, 12-row head, 300-bushel tank." "How many acres you got left?" "About 1,900. North 8, West quarter, some scattered, 40s. "And how long to harvest it?" "If weather holds, 8 days, maybe 9. Michael walked over to the combine, put his hand on the tire. The rubber was taller than his waist. "When was the last time you ran one of these?" "Been a while," Rob admitted. "You drove the 9600 when you were in high school." "That was 14 years ago, Dad, and about 3 generations of technology. You remember the basics. The rest is just computers and sensors." Michael turned back. His face was serious. "We need to talk numbers before Mom comes out. Real numbers." Rob pulled over 2 5-gallon buckets, flipped them upside down. They sat. The shop was quiet except for the tick of metal cooling and the distant sound of wind moving through corn. "I've got 1,800 acres harvested," Rob said. South quarter came in at 106 bushels per acre. Better than expected. Gross revenue so far about $557,000. "I've got 1,900 acres standing. If it averages 90 bushels, that's another 1.4 million gross. So call it 2 million total," Michael said, "minus harvest costs, fuel, trucking, elevator fees. Figure 200,000. Net 1.8 million. And your total debt? 860 across all loans. Seaways. Plus the October 15th operating loan payment, 340. Michael pulled out his phone, started typing numbers. "So after you pay the operating loan and account for living expenses, prepaid inputs, you'll have maybe 700,000 cash." "About that. And the bank wants you to improve your debt to collateral ratio. Current ratio is 3.5 to 1. They want 2 to 1 minimum." Rob nodded. Michael's engineering mind was already working the problem, breaking it into components. finding solutions. This was why Rob had spent those 4 years paying college tuition even when commodity prices were in the basement. So his son could think like this. What's the land worth? Michael asked. Market value, about $4 million for 2,800 acres. But Greg said in a forced sale, maybe $3 million. Okay, so if you sell 800 acres at market value, that's roughly 1.1 million. Pay down debt to say 200,000 total. Your remaining 2,000 acres at 3 million value gives you a 15-to-1 ratio. That works. Rob felt something cold in his chest. Sell 800 acres. Almost a third of the farm. Land his grandfather had broken with horses. Land his father had improved and expanded. Land Rob had spent 40 years learning every slope and soil type and wet spot. That's a lot of ground, Rob said quietly. I know, but it keeps you farming, and it positions you to buy back in the future if things improve. If things improve, Michael looked at his father. When did you become a pessimist? About 3 weeks ago when the corn stopped growing. They sat in silence. Through the open shop door, Rob could see the fields. Even from here, you could tell the corn was stressed, stunted. The color was wrong. There's another option, Michael said. We don't sell to Heartland or some outside investor. We sell to neighbors. Keep the land in the community. Maybe even maintain some operational connection. Nobody around here has cash to buy land right now, Rob said. They're all in the same boat. Maybe, or maybe we find out. Linda called them in for lunch. Sandwiches and soup, simple food, the kind you could eat quickly and get back to work. They sat at the kitchen table, the three of them, and Michael laid out what he'd been thinking. I've drafted a business plan, he said. Hendricks Family Farm, LLC. We restructure ownership. Dad owns 50%, you own 30%, Mom. I own 20. We each draw a salary instead of living off profit. Dad runs field operations. I run business operations and marketing. Mom handles books and compliance. Linda set down her spoon. That's a fundamental change in how we've operated. That's the point, Michael said. The old model is breaking. We need a new one. What about decision-making? Rob asked. Who has final say? We vote. But on field decisions, you have primary authority. On business decisions, I have primary authority. Financial oversight belongs to Mom. And when we disagree, then we work it out like adults, like business partners. Rob looked at Linda. She was watching Michael with an expression Rob couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe, or fear. Possibly both. What about your job in Minneapolis, Linda asked. I gave notice yesterday, 2 weeks. Michael, you had a good job. I'll have another good job. This one. And if it doesn't work, I'm 32 with a mechanical engineering degree. I'll find something. But you'll have given up security, Rob said. Security is an illusion, Dad. My company laid off 15% of staff last month. I was probably next anyway. At least this way I'm choosing my risk instead of having it chosen for me. Linda reached across the table, took Michael's hand. We can't pay you what you were making. I know. But I also won't have Minneapolis rent, and I'll have equity in something that matters. Rob felt the weight of it. His son was willing to risk his career, his financial security, his future, to save a farm that might fail anyway. It was either the bravest thing he'd ever seen or the most foolish. Time would tell which. Okay, Rob said, let's try it. That afternoon, they drove to Huron, had a meeting scheduled with Greg Morrison for 3 o'clock. The three of them walked into First Dakota National together. The receptionist looked surprised to see Michael. Word would spread before they left the building. Small towns work like that. Greg met them in the conference room instead of his office. Bigger table, more formal. He had papers spread out, loan documents, and collateral statements. His face was professionally neutral. Greg, you know my son Michael, Rob said. They shook hands. Michael, Greg said, heard you moved back to Minneapolis. Moved back here as of today. I'm joining the farm operation. Greg's eyebrows rose slightly. That's unexpected. Michael pulled a folder from his bag, set it on the table, opened it. Inside was a business plan, printed and bound. Professional. The kind of document Michael had probably prepared dozens of times in his engineering career. We're proposing a restructure of the operation, Michael said. Hendricks Family Farm becomes an LLC, new ownership structure, reduced debt load, modern business practices. We'd like the bank to work with us on extending the current loans and adjusting terms to reflect the new entity. Greg pulled the business plan toward him, started reading. Rob watched the banker's face. Greg was good at poker face, but small things gave him away. The slight nod when he saw the projected cash flows, The pause when he got to the section on risk management. The way his finger traced the debt reduction timeline. This is well done, Greg said after several minutes. Professional. I worked with an agricultural economist at South Dakota State, Michael said. Called in a favor from a professor I had. He reviewed the numbers. And his assessment? Viable if we execute correctly. Tight margins, but sustainable. Greg closed the folder, leaned back in his chair. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'll take this to the board, but I need to be honest with you. They're not in a helping mood right now. The losses this year have them spooked. We're not asking for help, Michael said. We're proposing a business restructure that reduces the bank's risk and maintains a performing loan. This is good for both parties. Maybe, but the board sees any kind of modification as added risk. Then they're not thinking clearly, Michael said. His voice was calm but firm. Foreclosing on this farm means a forced auction. Low prices. Maybe recovering 60, 70 cents on the dollar. Working with us means maintaining a relationship with a client who's banked here for 37 years and restructuring in a way that improves collateral ratios. Greg smiled slightly. You sound like a banker. I sound like an engineer who understands risk assessment. The meeting lasted another 40 minutes. Greg asked questions. Michael answered them. Rob sat mostly quiet, watching his son negotiate with a confidence Rob had never had in these situations. Linda occasionally added details about the books, the cash flow history, the expense patterns. By the time they left, Greg had agreed to present the plan to the board at their Monday meeting. Walking to the truck, Linda said, That went better than I expected. Don't celebrate yet, Rob said. Board still has to approve. They will, Michael said. You don't know that. No. But I know the alternative is worse for everyone. And eventually, people make rational decisions. Rob wasn't sure he shared his son's faith in human rationality, but he appreciated the optimism. Saturday morning, Rob went to the FSA office in Huron. The Farm Service Agency building sat on the edge of town, a low brick structure that always smelled like coffee and paper. He needed to file for emergency loan assistance, a backup plan in case the bank deal fell through. The waiting room was fuller than he'd ever seen it. 8 people ahead of him, all farmers, all holding the same forms. The drought had hit everyone. He recognized most of them. Vernon Kowalski, sitting in the corner with reading glasses on, filling out paperwork in careful block letters. Vern was 64, ran about 1,900 acres east of Rob's place. Good farmer, steady. They'd known each other 40 years. Rob sat down next to him. Vern looked up, nodded. Rough year, Vern said. That's one word for it. Heard you might be selling some ground. Word travels fast. Always does. Vern set down his pen. I'm in the same boat. Came up short this year. Considering options. How short? Vern glanced around, lowered his voice. 140,000. Crop insurance will cover some, but not enough. You thinking of selling? Maybe. Or maybe just retiring. I'm 64. Don't have the energy for another year like this. Before Rob could respond, another voice cut in. Isaiah Butler stood in the doorway to the back offices, paperwork in hand. Isaiah was 51, African-American, farmed 2,400 acres on the west side of the county. His grandfather had been a sharecropper. His father had saved enough to buy 80 acres in 1963. Isaiah had built it into a substantial operation through sheer determination and careful management. Selling, retiring, everybody's talking about it, Isaiah said. He sat down across from them. Like we're all just going to give up. Not giving up, Vern said, just being realistic. Realistic is another word for defeated. The 3 of them sat in uncomfortable silence. Around them, other farmers waited. The receptionist called names. People went back into offices, came out looking tired or worried or both. What's your situation? Rob asked Isaiah. Isaiah leaned back, crossed his arms, came up short about 180, got 2 girls in college, student loans that would choke a horse. Banks already called twice about restructuring. Same bank as us? Rob asked. First Dakota, yeah. Greg Morrison, the very same. Rob felt something shift in his mind. 3 farmers, same bank. Same banker, same problem. That wasn't coincidence. You think this is coordinated? Rob asked quietly. Isaiah shrugged. Don't know, but I know when I talked to Greg, he mentioned Heartland Agricultural Partners before I even brought up selling. Almost like he had them on speed dial. Vern leaned forward. He mentioned them to me too, said they were acquiring in the county, could give me a fair price and a clean exit. Rob thought about his own meeting, the phone call from Heartland the same day as his bank meeting. How fast word had traveled. How many other farmers you think they've talked to? Rob asked. No way to know, Vern said. But if I had to guess, probably most of the folks in this room. They looked around. The waiting room had filled up. 12 farmers now, 12 operations in crisis. How many more across the county? We should talk, Isaiah said. All of us. Compare notes. About what? Vern asked. About whether we're all getting the same story, whether there's a pattern. And if there is, then maybe we think about our options collectively instead of individually. Rob's name got called. He stood, nodded to Vern and Isaiah. We should get together, soon. Isaiah pulled out his phone. Give me your number. They exchanged contact information. Rob went back to fill out his emergency loan paperwork, but his mind was elsewhere, thinking about patterns and pressure and the way systems worked when people weren't paying attention. Sunday afternoon, Rob was checking corn moisture in the North 8 when his phone rang. Isaiah Butler. Rob, I talked to a few more people yesterday. You free tonight? Depends. What for? Getting some folks together. My place. 7 o'clock. Want to compare notes on what's happening. Who's coming? So far, Vern Kowalski, Carl and Raymond Schultz, Trish Bergstrom, Bill Christensen, and hopefully you. Rob thought about it. Those names represented a significant portion of the farming operation in their corner of the county. All good farmers, all facing pressure. I'll be there, Rob said. That evening, Rob drove to Isaiah's place. The farm sat on good ground, flat and fertile. The house was modest, well-maintained. Lights were on in the shop. Rob pulled up next to 4 other trucks already parked in the yard. Inside the shop, 6 people stood around a table made from a sheet of plywood laid across sawhorses. Isaiah had coffee brewing. Someone had brought donuts. It felt like a church meeting or a township board gathering. Informal, but serious. Rob knew everyone there. Vernon Kowalski, 64, steady and careful. Carl and Raymond Schultz, brothers who farmed together, 58 and 55 respectively. Patricia Bergstrom, 62, widow who'd taken over her husband's operation when he died 3 years ago. William Christensen, 68, oldest farmer there, Norwegian heritage, built like a fence post. Isaiah waved Rob over. Offered him coffee. Once everyone had settled, Isaiah spoke up. Thanks for coming. I know it's harvest season and nobody has time for meetings, but I think we need to talk about what's happening. He pulled out a notepad, started reading. First Dakota National has contacted at least 6 of us about restructuring loans or selling land. Heartland Agricultural Partners has made offers to at least 4 of us. The FSA office is backed up with emergency loan applications. Anyone seeing a pattern? Heads nodded around the table. Bill Christensen spoke up. His voice was gravelly, weathered. Been farming 47 years. This is the worst coordinated pressure I've seen since the farm crisis in the 80s. You think it's coordinated? Trish asked. Bill shrugged. Don't know if there's a conspiracy, but I know banks talk to each other. I know corporate farms have acquisition targets. And I know when everyone's desperate at the same time, prices drop. Carl Schultz, the older brother, cleared his throat. My brother and I ran our numbers. We're okay this year. Not great, but okay. But what worries us is next year. Input costs are already up. Seed companies announced increases. Fertilizer up 18%. If we have another short year, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Raymond, the younger brother, added, we've been farming together 31 years. Partnership split 50-50. But we're starting to disagree about strategy. Carl wants to expand, buy more ground. I want to stay conservative. This drought is exposing those disagreements. Trish Bergstrom spoke quietly. I'm 62. My husband died in 2009. Heart attack during harvest. My sons don't want to farm. One's a teacher. One's an electrician. They've got their own lives. I'm thinking this might be my last year. The shop went quiet. Everyone there knew what that meant. Another farm sold. More consolidation. The slow erosion of the community they'd all known. Vern Kowalski said, I'm 64. Planning to retire next year anyway. My nephew wants to take over, but he's working for a corporate farm right now. Making decent money. I don't know if he'll come back. Rob listened to all of it. Saw the pattern. 6 operations, all under different kinds of pressure. Financial, generational, personal, but all facing the same fundamental question. How much longer could they keep doing this? Can I say something? Rob asked. Everyone turned to him. My son came home Friday. Michael, he's been working as an engineer in Minneapolis. He gave up his job to come back and help restructure our operation. We're forming an LLC, Modern Business Practices, trying to find a sustainable model. How's that working? Bill asked. Don't know yet. We're presenting a plan to the bank tomorrow. But the point is we're trying something different because the old way clearly isn't working anymore. Isaiah leaned against the table. So what are you suggesting? I'm not sure yet, but I'm wondering if there's something we could do collectively that we can't do individually. Like what? Raymond asked. Rob thought about it. The idea was forming as he spoke. Like maybe we help each other. Not just neighborly help, strategic help. We coordinate our operations, share equipment when it makes sense, buy inputs together for better prices, maybe even market our grain collectively for better leverage. That's a co-op, Carl said. Those have been tried, most fail. Not a formal co-op, just practical cooperation. We're all harvesting the same corn, fighting the same weather, dealing with the same banks. Why are we doing it alone? The room was quiet. People were thinking. Rob could see it in their faces. The calculations, the possibilities, the risks. Finally, Bill Christensen said, I've got a problem. My combine, New Holland CR 9090, bought it last year for $420,000. Biggest mistake of my life. Still owe $340 on it. Things worth maybe $280 on the used market. I'm underwater on a machine I can't afford and can't sell. How does that connect to what Rob's saying? Trish asked. Bill looked at her. Because if I could share that combine with someone else, split the bantons, maybe I could make the numbers work. As it is, I'm running a $400,000 machine on 2,100 acres. Economics don't work. Raymond spoke up. Carl and I have two older 965s, paid off but aging. We could probably cover 3,000 acres with one machine if we had help during peak times. Rob saw where this was going. Started doing calculations in his head. Combined, the 7 operations in this room represented over 14,000 acres. 8 combines worth about $2 million used. If they coordinated, they could probably harvest that with 4, maybe 5 machines. Isaiah pulled out his phone, started typing notes. Okay, let's think about this practically. We've got maybe 10 days of good harvest weather left before we risk snow. How much does everyone have left to cut? They went around the table. Rob had 1,900 acres. Vern had 200. Isaiah had 1,200. Carl and Raymond had 300. Trish had 900. Bill had 1,100. Total, 5,600 acres. If we coordinated, Raymond said, if we helped each other instead of all working separately, we could finish faster. Reduce weather risk. But what does that cost us individually? Carl asked. I help you for a day. That's a day I'm not harvesting my own crop. Unless we're strategic about it, Rob said. We identify who's most at risk, weather, bank pressure, equipment problems. We help them first. Then they help the next person, like a chain. Trish shook her head. That's asking a lot, asking people to put someone else's farm ahead of their own. Maybe, Rob said. Or maybe it's recognizing that we're all going to sink or swim together anyway. The conversation continued for another hour. People asked hard questions, pushed back, worried about liability and logistics and a dozen practical problems. But underneath it all, Rob sensed something shifting, a recognition that isolation wasn't working anymore. Finally, Isaiah said, look, we don't have to decide everything tonight, but what if we just commit to this? We stay in communication. We share information about weather, equipment, market prices, and if someone hits a crisis, a breakdown, or a time crunch, we help if we can. That's pretty vague, Carl said. It's a start, Isaiah replied. They talked for another 20 minutes. Then one by one they agreed. Not to a formal contract or binding commitment, just to the idea that they'd try to help each other when possible. Driving home, Rob felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite hope, more like the absence of total despair. The recognition that he wasn't alone in this. Linda was still up when he got home, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop, working on the books. How did it go? She asked. Interesting. There's 6 other operations in similar situations. We talked about coordinating, helping each other. That's good, isn't it? Maybe. Or maybe it's just people in a sinking boat making plans to bail water together. Linda closed the laptop, looked at her husband. Rob, you've spent 40 years being pessimistic about everything except the weather and crop prices. Maybe it's time to be pessimistic about those and optimistic about people. He smiled despite himself. When did you get so wise? 34 years of living with a stubborn farmer. That night, Rob couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the meeting. 7 operations, 14,000 acres, all facing pressure. If they worked together, genuinely worked together, could they survive? Or were they just delaying the inevitable? At 2 in the morning, he got up, went to the office, pulled out a map of the county, started marking the farms from the meeting. Rob's 2,800 acres, Vern's 1,900, Isaiah's 2,400, Carl and Raymond's 3,200, Trisha's 1,600, Bill's 2,100. Total 14,100 acres. He looked at the map. Their farms formed a rough cluster in the northwest quarter of the county, not adjacent but close, connected by section roads and relationships and 40 years of living in the same community. On the map, he drew circles around each operation. Then he thought about Heartland agricultural partners, how they operated, buy up adjacent farms, consolidate them, operate at scale with hired managers and modern technology. They probably had their own map with these same farms circled. Acquisition targets. Rob stared at the map for a long time, saw two different futures. One where 7 independent operations got picked off one by one, sold or foreclosed, consolidated into corporate agriculture. The other where 7 operations found a way to survive together. Neither future was certain, but at least the second one was something they could control. Monday morning, Michael drove to the bank alone. The board meeting was scheduled for 9. Greg had said he'd call with results by noon. Rob wanted to go, but Michael had insisted. "This is business, Dad. Let me handle it." So Rob went back to the North 8, started combining. The work was mechanical, mindless in a good way. Let him think while his hands and eyes managed the machine. At 11:45, his phone rang. "Michael." "They approved it," Michael said. Not enthusiastically. Greg said the vote was 4-3, but they approved. Rob felt tension. He didn't know he was holding release from his shoulders. "What are the terms?" "Modified loan structure. We paid down $200,000 in principal by December 31st. That brings total debt to $660. They extend the rest over 10 years at current rates. We maintain the operating line at $289 for next year with annual reviews." "That's doable," Rob said. "Barely, but yes." There was silence on the line. Then Michael said, "Dad, we're going to make this work." "I hope you're right." "I am, trust me." Rob wanted to believe his son's confidence, wanted to believe that modern business practices and careful planning could overcome economics that were fundamentally broken. But he'd been farming too long to trust and hope. Still, he said, "Good work, Michael. Thank you. See you at home." Rob hung up, sat in the combine cab, engine idling. Through the dusty windshield, he could see corn stretching away in rows. Stunted corn, drought-stressed corn, but corn nonetheless. A crop, something to harvest and sell and build from. He put the combine back in gear, started moving. There was work to do. There was always work to do. That evening, Rob got a text from Isaiah. "Group meeting Wednesday night, my place again. 7 p.m. We need to make actual plans." Rob showed the text to Linda and Michael over dinner. "Are you going?" Linda asked. "I think so. We're all in similar situations. Makes sense to coordinate." Michael looked up from his plate. "Can I come?" "It's your farm now too," Rob said. "Or part of it anyway." Wednesday evening, the same 7 people gathered in Isaiah's shop. But this time the energy was different, more focused. People brought notebooks and laptops. Carl Schultz had printed out a harvest schedule. Raymond had a spreadsheet of equipment specifications. Isaiah started the meeting. "Okay, we all agreed to help each other. Now we need to figure out how that actually works." For the next 2 hours, they talked logistics. Who had what left to harvest? What equipment everyone was running? Weather forecasts, grain marketing. It was complex and messy and full of disagreement. But slowly, a plan emerged. They'd coordinate harvest schedules, focus on the farms most at risk first. Isaiah's 1,200 acres needed to come off fast because his land quality was lowest and weather would hit him hardest. Trisha's 900 acres needed help because she was running her combine alone without a grain cart operator. Bill's 1,100 needed to be done before the bank made another call. Rob, Vern, and Carl and Raymond were in better shape. They could wait a few days if needed. The real question was whether anyone was willing to actually take time away from their own harvest to help someone else. Bill asked it directly. "Who's going to show up when Isaiah needs help?" Rob looked around the table, saw the hesitation. Everyone was doing the same calculation. Help someone else meant risk to your own operation. Equipment wear, lost time, weather exposure. Finally, Vern said, "I will. I've got 200 acres left. I can finish that in a day, day and a half. After that, I'm available. The room shifted. One commitment broke the ice. Carl and Raymond looked at each other. That silent communication brothers develop over decades. Then Carl said, "We'll bring one combine. Raymond can finish our place solo. I'll help wherever needed." Trish spoke up. "I can't operate another combine, but I can run grain cart, drive truck, whatever helps." Rob felt the moment, felt the weight of it. These were people putting their own operations at risk to help neighbors, not because it made financial sense, because it was right. "I'll bring my S680 after I finish my North 8, Rob said. "That's 3-4 days from now. But after that, I'm in." Michael, sitting quiet until now, said, "And I can help coordinate, logistics, schedule, make sure we're using everyone's time efficiently." Isaiah nodded slowly. "Okay, okay, so we do this. We actually do this." Bill Christensen, oldest man in the room, spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. 47 years I've been farming, watched a lot of changes, seen neighbors come and go. But this is what it used to be like. Before everything got so big and corporate and isolated, people helped people because that's what you did." He looked around the table. "I don't know if this will save any of our farms. Maybe we're all going under anyway. But at least we'll go under knowing we tried, together." Nobody said anything, because Bill had spoken what they were all feeling. The meeting ended with handshakes and commitments. They'd start with Isaiah's field. Saturday morning, 5 a.m., bring whatever equipment and labor they could spare. Driving home, Michael said, "That was something." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been in a lot of business meetings, negotiations, strategy sessions, but I've never seen people volunteer to sacrifice their own interests for someone else's. Not like that." "That's farming," Rob said. "Or it used to be. Why'd it stop?" "Economics, scale, debt. When margins get thin enough, you can't afford generosity anymore." "But they're doing it anyway." Rob nodded. "Yeah, they are." They drove in silence for a while. Then Michael asked, "Do you think it'll work?" Rob looked out at fields passing in the darkness. "I think it has to, because the alternative is giving up. And none of those people in that room know how to do that." When they got home, Linda was waiting. She'd been on the phone with Trish Bergstrom. The two women had become friends over the years. Church connection, shared experience of farm life. "Trish is scared," Linda said. "Her sons are pushing her to sell. They don't want her farming alone. They worry about her." "She's capable," Rob said. "I know. But she's also 62 and running a 1,600-acre operation solo. It's a lot." "What did you tell her?" "That we'd help. That she's not alone." Linda looked at Rob, then at Michael. "We're really doing this, aren't we? All of us together." "Looks like it," Rob said. Linda smiled. First time Rob had seen her smile in weeks. Good, because that's what community is supposed to be. That night, Rob lay in bed thinking about Saturday, about showing up to harvest someone else's crop while his own stood waiting, about the risk, about the trust required, about what it meant to put something larger than yourself ahead of immediate self-interest. Next to him, Linda was already asleep, her breathing steady and peaceful. Outside, the wind moved through the corn with that papery rustling sound, the sound of a crop waiting, the sound of time passing. Rob thought about his grandfather, wondered what the old man would think of all this. 7 farmers banding together in a last attempt to survive forces bigger than any of them. Would he call it noble or foolish? Probably both, Rob decided, same as most things in farming. He closed his eyes, let sleep come. There was work ahead, hard work that might not save them but was worth doing anyway. Because sometimes the trying was the point. Sometimes showing up was the victory, regardless of outcome. And come Saturday morning, 7 farmers would show up, together. That had to count for something. The alarm went off at 4 in the morning. Rob was already awake, had been for an hour lying in the darkness, thinking about what they were about to do. Linda stirred beside him, reached over to turn off the alarm before it could wake them both, found him already sitting up. You didn't sleep, she said. Some liar. He showered in the dark, dressed in the clothes he'd laid out the night before. Work jeans, flannel shirt, boots that had 10 years of field dirt worked into the leather. When he came downstairs, Michael was already in the kitchen, coffee brewing, looking at weather radar on his phone. System's moving faster than expected, Michael said. Might be here by Monday instead of Tuesday. That gives us less time. I know. They drank coffee standing up, neither one hungry despite the early hour. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten in that particular way of autumn mornings, the darkness thinning to gray before the sun actually showed itself. Rob walked out to the shop, fired up the S680. The big diesel rumbled to life, that deep mechanical sound that was as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. He let it warm up while he did a final check. Oil, hydraulic fluid, tire pressure, everything had to be right. Today wasn't about his field. Today was about Isaiah's, about proving that 7 farmers could work together instead of separately. By 4:45, he was rolling down the county road, combined lights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. The machine barely fit on the 2-lane blacktop, 12-row head taking up most of the width. Any oncoming traffic would have to pull way over. But at this hour, the roads were empty except for other farmers heading to fields. He turned onto the gravel road that led to Isaiah's place, saw lights ahead, other combines already gathering. The sight of it made something catch in his throat. 4 combines lined up in Isaiah's yard, diesel engines rumbling, lights blazing. Vern's John Deere 9770, Carl Schultz's 9650, Bill Christensen's massive New Holland CR 9090, and now Rob's S680 pulling in to join them. Isaiah stood in the middle of it all, directing traffic, pointing combines to where they should park. He walked over as Rob shut down. "Didn't think you'd actually come," Isaiah said. "Said I would. I know. But saying and doing are different things." Rob looked at the other machines, at the men climbing down from cabs, thermoses in hand, breath visible in the cold air. "Where's Raymond?" "Finishing their place. Carl's here, that's what matters." Trish Bergstrom pulled up in a pickup truck, grain cart hitched behind. She climbed out, waved. Michael arrived in Rob's truck, brought boxes of donuts and more coffee. Nobody had time for a real breakfast, but sugar and caffeine would get them through the morning. They gathered in a rough circle, 5 combine operators plus Trish and Michael. Isaiah pulled out a hand-drawn map of his 1,200 acres. The land was divided among 3 fields. The north section, 480 acres. The east quarter, 400 acres. The south 80, 320 acres. "We'll run 4 machines," Isaiah said. "Rob, you take the north section with me. Vern, you and Carl take the east quarter. Bill, you start on the south 80. "What about coordination?" Michael asked. "You can't all just run random." "We'll work in echelon," Carl said. "Offset patterns, radio communication. We've done this before, just not usually all together." Michael pulled out his own phone, showed a spreadsheet. "I mapped optimal patterns based on field shapes and equipment capacity. If you follow these routes, we minimize overlap and maximize efficiency." The older farmers looked at each other. Rob could see the skepticism, engineers and their spreadsheets, but Michael was trying to help. "Let's start with the plan we know," Rob said gently. "If we need to adjust, we will." Michael nodded, stepped back. Rob appreciated his son's willingness to defer. This was field work. Book knowledge only went so far. By 5:30, the sun was breaking the horizon. 4 combines moved into position. The formation was something to see. Machines worth close to $2 million, operated by men whose combined farming experience exceeded 200 years, all working one field that wasn't their own. Rob started his first pass. The corn was dry enough, right around 15% moisture. It flowed into the header, up through the feeder house, into the threshing system. The S680 processed it with mechanical precision, kernels separated from cob, chaff blown out the back, clean grain elevated into the tank. His yield monitor showed 92 bushels per acre, better than Isaiah had feared. Not good by historical standards, but acceptable for a drought year. Rob did the math automatically. 1,200 acres at 92 bushels was 110,400 bushels. At $8.20 per bushel, that was $905,280 gross. Minus harvest costs and hauling, maybe $850,000 net, enough to keep Isaiah in business another year. The 4 combines worked in rhythm. Radio chatter kept them coordinated, Vern calling out when he needed to unload, Carl adjusting his speed to stay aligned, Bill reporting a slight vibration in his feeder house. Nothing serious, but he was monitoring it. Trish ran the grain cart, shuttling between combines and the semi-trucks waiting at the field edge. She'd done this work before when her husband was alive. The muscle memory was still there. Pull alongside the combine while it kept moving, match speed, let the unloading auger swing out and pour grain into the cart. 300 bushels in 90 seconds, then pull away and head for the trucks. Michael coordinated the trucks, called the elevator to confirm they could handle the volume, managed the logistics of getting grain from field to market. He'd made a spreadsheet for this too, truck schedules and timing. The old farmers might have rolled their eyes at spreadsheets, but they had to admit the kid was organized. By 9 o'clock, they'd covered 400 acres. The work was going faster than expected. 4 combines in coordination could harvest 45, 50 acres per hour when everything ran smoothly. At this rate, they'd finish Isaiah's 1,200 acres by early afternoon. That's when Carl's combine died. Rob was 300 yards away, making a pass along the east edge of the north section, when he heard Carl's voice on the radio. "I'm down. Feeder house just stopped." Rob pulled out of the row, looked across the field, could see Carl's 9650 sitting motionless, header down, engine still running but nothing moving. "What happened?" Vern asked over the radio. "Don't know, just quit feeding." "Can you restart it?" "Trying." Rob watched Carl's combine, saw the header try to engage, heard the squeal of metal on metal even from 300 yards away. Then silence. "Belt's gone," Carl said. Feeder drive belt snapped. "You got a spare?" "Negative. Used my spare 3 weeks ago. Been meaning to order another." Rob felt the day shift. One combine down meant 25% loss in capacity. What would have taken 6 hours might now take 8, and the weather window was shrinking. "How long to get a belt?" Isaiah asked. "Dealer in Huron. If they have one in stock, maybe 2 hours round trip." "That's 2 hours we don't have," Bill said. Rob thought fast. His S680 used a different belt configuration, Vern's 97702, but Bill's New Holland might have something compatible. Different manufacturer, but similar design philosophy. "Bill, you got spare belts?" Rob asked. "Got a parts kit. Let me check." Bill shut down his combine, climbed down, opened the side panel where he kept tools and common repair parts. 5 minutes later, his voice came back on the radio. "I've got a belt that might work. Same width, little longer. We can cut it down if needed." "Bring it over." The harvest stopped. All 4 combines sat idle while Bill and Carl worked on the repair. Rob and Vern and Isaiah climbed down, walked over to help. Michael and Trish joined them, 7 people standing around Carl's 9650 in the middle of a cornfield, trying to jury-rig a belt from a different machine. The old belt had shredded completely, pieces of it wrapped around pulleys and drive shafts. Carl and Bill worked together, pulling out fragments, cleaning the system. The replacement belt was 2 inches too long. They'd have to remove a section and reconnect it. "Anyone got a belt punch?" Carl asked. Rob walked back to his combine, grabbed his toolbox, found the punch kit he'd bought years ago, barely used but kept because you never knew. Brought it back. Carl laid the belt on the ground, measured carefully, marked where to cut. The work was slow, precise. You couldn't rush this kind of repair. One mistake and the belt would fail again. Maybe damage other components. They were 45 minutes into it when Raymond Schultz pulled up in his truck. "Finished our place," Raymond said. "Thought you might need help." Carl looked up at his brother. "We're good, just a belt." "I can see that." The brothers worked side by side, not talking much, the way brothers do when they've been working together for decades. They knew each other's rhythms, anticipated movements, passed tools without asking. Finally, after 70 minutes, the belt was installed. Carl climbed back into the cab, engaged the feeder house. It caught, held, started pulling stalks smoothly. "We're back," Carl said. The combines resumed, but they'd lost over an hour. Rob checked his watch. 10:40. They'd done maybe 500 acres total, 700 to go, and the forecast still showed weather arriving Monday morning. The afternoon sun beat down. Temperature climbed into the mid-70s, unusual for late September. Inside the combine cabs, even with air conditioning, the heat built up. Dust from the dry corn hung in the air, coated everything. Rob could feel it in his throat, taste it when he drank from his water bottle. His back was starting to ache. 59 years old and 12 hours in a combine seat would do that. He shifted position, tried to ease the pressure on his lower spine. Thought about the chiropractor in Huron he saw twice a year when things got really bad. Probably should make an appointment for next week. The radio crackled. Vern's voice tight with concern. "I'm getting a hydraulic leak. Passenger side, looks like a line." "How bad?" Isaiah asked. "Steady drip. Not spraying, but it's coming out." "Can you finish your current tank?" "Maybe. But I'm going to need to shut down and fix it." Rob felt frustration building. 2 breakdowns in one day. This was the risk of running older equipment hard. Everything was wearing out at once. The drought year had pushed all of them to defer maintenance, and now it was catching up. Vern limped through another 20 minutes, then had to stop. The hydraulic leak had worsened. Fluid was dripping steadily onto the ground beneath the combine. He shut down, climbed underneath to assess the damage. "It's the power steering line," Vern called out. "Connector's cracked. Needs replacement." Isaiah knelt down next to him, looked at the damage. "Can we patch it?" "Not safely. If it fails completely while I'm running, I lose steering. That's dangerous. So we need a parts run." "Looks like it." Michael volunteered to go, took Vern's truck, headed for the New Holland dealer in Huron. That was another hour minimum. Meanwhile, 3 combines kept running. Rob, Carl, and Bill. They adjusted their patterns, tried to cover the ground Vern would have harvested. The work was harder now, not just physically but mentally. The breakdowns were eating away at confidence, made everyone wonder what would fail next. Isaiah's Case IH was running rough, engine missing slightly. Bill's big New Holland was making a noise in the separator that hadn't been there this morning. Rob's S680 seemed okay, but it was overdue for service, and he knew it. Around 2 in the afternoon, Trish pulled her grain cart alongside Rob's combine. He swung out the unloading auger, started filling her tank. They were side by side, moving at 4 miles per hour across the stubble. "How you holding up?" Trish asked over the radio. "Tired. You?" "Same. But Rob, this is something. What we're doing here." "What's that?" "Proving we can still do it. The old way. Neighbors helping neighbors." Rob watched grain pour into her cart. Golden kernels cascading down. Each one represented photosynthesis and soil minerals, and rain that hadn't come, and prayers that hadn't been answered. But also stubbornness and determination and the refusal to quit. "I'm not sure the old way works anymore," Rob said. "Economics are different now." "Maybe. But maybe that's exactly why we need it. Because when economics push us apart, community pulls us together." She pulled away with a full load, headed for the waiting semi. Rob watched her go. 62 years old, widow, running a farm alone, still showing up to help others. There was something in that worth preserving. Michael returned at 3:15 with the hydraulic line. He and Vern installed it in 40 minutes. By 4 o'clock, all 4 combines were running again. They had maybe 3 hours of daylight left and 400 acres to go. The pace picked up. Everyone pushed a little harder. Ground speed increased from 4 to 5 miles per hour. Not much, but it added up. Efficiency improved as they fell into rhythm again after the disruptions. The sun dropped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The combines threw long shadows across the stubble. Dust hung in the golden light like something from a painting. Rob thought about all the September evenings he'd seen like this, thousands of them over 40 years. Each one different, but fundamentally the same. The eternal cycle of planting and harvesting, hope and disappointment, effort and outcome. At 6:30, Bill Christensen harvested the last pass. His big CR9090 cleared the final strip of corn on the South 80, grain tank full, the field behind him nothing but stubble and chaff. "That's it," Bill said over the radio. "Isaiah's done." The 4 combines congregated at the south edge of the field. Operators climbed down, stood in the cooling evening air. They were covered in dust and chaff, clothes stained with hydraulic fluid and grease from the repairs. Every one of them looked exhausted. Isaiah walked among them, shaking hands. Didn't trust himself to say much. Rob could see the emotion on his face. 1,200 acres harvested in one day. With help, with community. "I don't know how to thank you," Isaiah said finally. "Don't need thanks," Vern said. "Just do the same for someone else when their time comes." "That's the deal," Carl agreed. They loaded up the combines, prepared to head home. Michael had the final numbers on his spreadsheet. 1,200 acres, 94 bushels per acre average, slightly better than the initial readings. 112,800 bushels total. Gross value $929,600 at current prices. More importantly, they'd done it in one day. Weather had held, equipment had mostly held, the coordination had worked. Driving home in the darkness, combined lights sweeping the county roads, Rob felt something he'd almost forgotten. Satisfaction. Not from his own accomplishment, but from collective achievement. 7 people working toward a common goal. In an age of isolation and competition, they'd chosen cooperation. His phone buzzed, text from Linda. "Proud of you." He smiled, typed back one-handed, steering with the other. "Proud of all of us." Sunday was supposed to be rest. In farming communities, Sunday meant church and family dinners and recovery from the week's work. But weather didn't respect Sundays, and neither did harvest deadlines. Rob woke at 7, body aching in places he'd forgotten could ache. Linda had coffee ready, breakfast cooking. Michael was already up, reviewing equipment maintenance schedules on his laptop. "We need to service your combine today," Michael said. "You're 200 hours over recommended service interval." "I know, just been pushing it." "Well, we can't push it anymore. If something major fails, we're down for days, not hours." Rob nodded. His son was right. They spent Sunday morning in the shop, changing oil and filters, greasing fittings, checking belts and chains. The S680 had 64 grease points. Rob knew where everyone was by feel, could grease the entire machine in darkness if he had to. While they worked, Isaiah called, "Rob, we need to talk about what's next." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we just proved coordination works. Now we need to figure out who we help next." "Thought we were doing in Trish's place." "We are. But I've been thinking, what if we approach this more strategically? Look at who's most at risk and prioritize accordingly." Rob wiped grease from his hands. Put the phone on speaker so Michael could hear. "What are you proposing?" Rob asked. "I want to call a meeting, tonight. All of us. Map out the next 10 days. Weather's coming. We need a plan." They met at 6 in the evening, back at Isaiah's shop. The same 7 people, but the energy was different now. Yesterday's success had created momentum, belief that this might actually work. Isaiah had printed weather forecasts from 3 different sources: NOAA, Weather Underground, and a private agricultural forecasting service. All showed the same basic pattern. Weather system arriving Monday night into Tuesday, precipitation probability 85%, projected amounts 1.5 to 2 inches over 36 hours. "We've got maybe 30 hours before rain," Isaiah said. "After that, we're looking at a week of drying time before fields are workable again." "So who do we help next?" Vern asked. Trish spoke up. "My 900 acres can wait. I'm not under immediate bank pressure. Focus on whoever's most at risk." Bill shifted in his chair. "That would be me." First Dakota called again Friday. They want an update on my situation. I think they're getting ready to move on foreclosure. "What's your timeline?" Raymond asked. "Need to show harvest progress by end of next week. If I can prove I'm bringing in crop, selling grain, they'll probably give me more time. If I'm still sitting on standing corn, they'll pull the trigger." "How much you got left?" Rob asked. 1,100 acres, all in one piece, the west section. Carl looked at his brother. "Raymond and I can help. We're done with ours." "I can bring my machine tomorrow," Vern said. Rob calculated in his head. His own North 8 still needed harvesting, 1,400 acres. But Bill's situation was more urgent. The bank would foreclose on Bill before they'd foreclose on Rob. Not because Rob's situation was better, but because Bill's debt structure was worse. "Count me in," Rob said. "I'll push my field back a day." Michael looked at his father. "Dad, you need to get your crop in too." "We will, but Bill needs help now." Linda had come to this meeting, sat quietly in the back. Now she spoke up. "What about the economics of this? Every day Rob delays his own harvest is risk. Weather risk, quality risk, financial risk." "I know," Rob said. "Do you?" "Because we just got the bank to approve our restructuring. If we default because we were helping someone else instead of taking care of our own operation, that's not noble. That's foolish." The room went quiet. Linda had said what everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to voice. Bill stood up. "Rob, I appreciate the offer, but your wife's right. You can't sacrifice your farm for mine." "I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm managing risk collectively instead of individually." "That's a nice theory," Linda said. "But the bank doesn't care about theories. They care about payments." Rob looked at his wife, saw the fear behind her words. She'd supported every decision he'd made for 34 years. But this was pushing her limits. The risk was real. The consequences were real. 3 days, Rob said. "We help Bill for 3 days. Get most of his crop in. Then I focus on my own place. That still leaves me a week before weather gets critical." "And if the forecast changes," Michael asked, "if the weather arrives early, then we adjust." Father and son locked eyes. This was the fundamental tension. The engineer wanted certainty, measurable outcomes, controlled variables. The farmer knew that certainty didn't exist. You made the best decision with the information available and dealt with consequences as they came. "I think we should vote," Isaiah said. "Everyone who's willing to help Bill tomorrow, raise your hand." 5 hands went up. Rob, Vern, Carl, Isaiah, Raymond. Trish abstained, said she'd help with grain cart and logistics regardless. Michael didn't vote, wasn't his decision to make. Linda stood, walked out of the shop. Rob followed her, found her standing by their truck, arms crossed, looking at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "You think I'm wrong," Rob said. "I think you're being the man I married, the one who always helps people even when it costs him. Is that a bad thing?" "It is if it costs us everything. We're not going to lose everything." "You don't know that." Rob moved closer to his wife, put his hands on her shoulders. "Linda, we've got $700,000 in cash from the harvest so far. The bank approved our restructuring. We're in better shape than we've been in months. For now, but every choice has consequences." "I know, and I'm choosing to believe that helping our neighbors is the right choice, even if the economics are questionable." Linda leaned into him. "What if you're wrong? Then we'll deal with it together, like we always have." She was quiet for a long moment, then, 3 days. That's it. After that, you focus on our place." "Deal." They stood together in the darkness. Inside the shop, the meeting continued. Plans being made, commitments being solidified. 7 farmers trying to survive together in a system designed to eliminate them individually. Monday morning arrived cold. 48 degrees at 5 a.m., frost on the windshields. Rob scraped ice from the S6802's windows before climbing into the cab. 4 combines gathered at Bill Christensen's west section, same formation as Saturday. Different field, same mission. Bill's 1,100 acres were good ground. Flat, well-drained, deep topsoil. The kind of land that made 150 bushel corn in normal years. This year it was making 95. Still better than most. The combines started rolling at first light. Rob took the north quarter. Vern took the south. Carl and Raymond worked the middle section together. Bill ran his own machine, the big CR9090, eating up ground faster than the others could keep pace. Michael coordinated again, but this time he stayed out of the way more. Let the operators work. His spreadsheets were useful for logistics, but the old farmers knew their craft. They'd been doing this since before computers existed. By noon, they'd covered 600 acres. The work was going smoothly, no breakdowns yet, equipment running well. Weather holding clear, though clouds were building in the west. Rob stopped to unload into Trish's grain cart. While grain poured from his tank into hers, he looked at the sky. Those clouds were moving faster than forecast. The weather system was accelerating. "Michael," Rob said over the radio, "check the latest forecast." "On it." 2 minutes later, Michael's voice came back. Tense. "NOAA just updated. System arriving tonight instead of tomorrow morning. Precipitation starting around 8 p.m. Rob checked his watch, 1:15. That gave them less than 7 hours. 500 acres still to go. At current pace, they'd need 8 hours minimum. "We need to speed up," Rob said. "Already running at capacity," Bill replied. "Then we run past capacity." Rob pushed his ground speed up from 5 to 5.5 miles per hour. The S680 handled it, but the grain loss increased. He could see kernels blowing out the back of the machine. Precious yield left on the ground. But time was now more valuable than perfection. The other combines followed suit. Everyone pushed harder, faster turns at the headlands, less careful about overlap. The goal shifted from optimal harvest to completed harvest. At 3 o'clock, Bill's CR9090 started overheating, temperature gauge climbing into the red zone. He had to shut down, let it cool. That cost them 20 minutes. When he restarted, the engine ran rough, missing on at least one cylinder, but it ran. "Keep going," Bill said over the radio. "I'll nurse it." At 4:30, the wind picked up, 25 miles per hour out of the west, bringing the smell of rain. The sky was darkening, not just from approaching evening, but from clouds thick and heavy with moisture. 300 acres to go, 3.5 hours of daylight left. Weather maybe 4 hours away. They kept running. The combines threw dust that the wind caught and scattered. Chaff swirled in the air. The machines were working at the edge of their capacity, operators pushing them harder than was wise. Rob's fuel gauge was dropping. He'd need to refuel soon. Michael had anticipated this, had a fuel truck standing by at the field edge. Rob pulled out of the rows, topped off his tank in 10 minutes, got back to work. At 6 o'clock, the light was fading, temperature dropping. Rob could feel the weather in his bones, that particular pressure that comes before a storm. Farmers developed this sense, a kind of atmospheric intuition. 150 acres remaining. The combines had their lights on now, halogen beams cutting through the dust and darkness. It was surreal, beautiful in a harsh way, 4 machines working in formation under artificial light, racing against weather and time and economics. At 7:15, Vern's combine quit. Engine died completely. No warning, just sudden silence. He tried to restart. Nothing. Not even a crank. "I'm done," Vern said over the radio. "Something electrical. I can't fix it in the dark." "How much is left?" Isaiah asked. "Maybe 80 acres. Rob felt the weight of it. 80 acres at 95 bushels per acre, that was 7,600 bushels. $62,000 of Bill's crop, just sitting there. And Vern's machine dead. 3 combines, 80 acres, 45 minutes of work in daylight. But they didn't have daylight, and the first drops of rain were starting to fall. "We keep going," Bill said. "We finish this." Rob looked at his fuel gauge. Quarter tank. Enough. Looked at the sky, rain increasing, looked at the field. So close. The 3 combines ran through the rain. It wasn't heavy yet, just steady. The corn was wet now, harder to process. Moisture content climbing. But they were committed. 80 acres. 70. 60. Rob's combine was caked in mud from the wet field. The tracks were slipping. But he kept going. Watched his yield monitor, his fuel gauge, his grain tank level, managed all the variables. At 7:52, Carl Schultz harvested the last row. His 9,650 cleared the final strip of corn, the field complete except for Vern's 80 acres still standing in the northeast corner where his machine had died. "We did it," Carl said. "Not all of it," Bill replied. "Still got Vern's section." "We got enough. Bill, you can finish Vern's part later this week when his machine's fixed. What matters is your 1,100 is mostly done. Bank will see harvest progress." Actually, Vern's voice came over the radio. "If someone can tow my combine out tomorrow, I'll get it fixed and come back midweek. Finish those 80 acres for Bill. Can't leave a job incomplete." The combines congregated at the field edge in the rain. Operators climbed down, stood in the weather. They were soaked, exhausted, running on adrenaline and stubbornness. Bill walked among them, shook each man's hand. His face said what his words couldn't. Gratitude beyond measure. Debt beyond repayment. "I don't deserve this," Bill said. "Nobody deserves anything," Rob replied. "We just do what we can." The rain picked up. They loaded up quickly, headed for shelter. Rob drove his combine home through weather that was quickly becoming a storm. Lightning flickered in the west. Thunder rumbled. The drought was ending, at least temporarily. At home, Linda met him at the door with a towel. He was dripping wet, covered in mud and chaff. "You got it done," she said. "Most of it. Vern's machine died, left 80 acres. He'll finish it later this week." That's more than most. He showered, changed, came downstairs to find Linda had made soup. Michael was at the table, laptop open, reviewing tomorrow's plans. "How much do we have left?" Rob asked. "Your 1,400 acres," Michael said. "Trish's 900, plus Vern's 80 at Bill's place once his combine's fixed. Call it 2,400 acres total that still need harvest." "And how much time?" "Rain should last through Wednesday. Fields will be too wet Thursday. Maybe workable Friday if it drains well." "So we're looking at Saturday at the earliest," Rob said. "For your North 8, yes. But Dad, that field's on higher ground. It'll drain faster. Trish's field is bottom ground. Could be another week before it's dry enough." Rob felt the weight of it. They'd helped Isaiah. They'd helped Bill mostly. Now his own crop was at risk because of delays. Linda had been right to worry. "What's the crop insurance situation?" Rob asked. Michael pulled up another file. "You're covered for yield loss, not quality loss. If the standing corn sprouts or gets damaged by weather, that's on us." "How much could we lose?" "Hard to say. 10, 20% if we're lucky. 30 or more if we get multiple rain events." Rob did the math. His 1,400 acres at 90 bushels per acre was 126,000 bushels. At $8.20 per bushel, that was over $1 million gross. Lose 30% to weather damage, and you're talking 300,000 in losses. Linda sat down across from him. "Say it." "Say what?" "Say that I was right, that helping others put our operation at risk." Rob looked at his wife. "You were right, this was a risk. It is a risk, but I'd make the same choice again. Even if it costs us the farm, even then. Because what's the alternative? Save ourselves by watching our neighbors fail? I can't do that, Linda. I don't know how." She reached across the table, took his hand. "I know. That's who you are. I just wish the world rewarded people like you instead of punishing them." Outside, the rain continued, steady and soaking, the kind of rain they'd needed 3 months ago. Now it was just an obstacle. Rob went to bed but couldn't sleep. Lay in the darkness, listening to rain on the roof, thinking about 1,400 acres of corn standing in his field, getting wetter by the hour. Thought about all the decisions that had led to this moment. The choice to help Isaiah, the choice to help Bill, the choice to believe that community mattered more than individual survival. Were those good choices? The economics said no. The ethics said yes. And Rob had long ago learned that farming was the constant negotiation between those two forces. He must have dozed eventually because he woke to his phone ringing. 3 in the morning. Nobody called at 3 in the morning unless something was wrong. It was Vern Kowalski. Rob, I'm sorry to wake you, but I need to tell you something. What's wrong? I'm selling. Made the decision tonight, calling Heartland in the morning. I'm done. Rob sat up in bed. Vern, don't do this. We can help. We can coordinate. Get your crop in. It's not about the crop. It's about me. I'm 64 years old. I'm tired. And after my combine died tonight, sitting in the rain, I realized I don't want to do this anymore. You're just having a bad night. Number. I've been thinking about it for months. Tonight just made it clear. I want to retire with dignity while I still can, before the farm breaks me completely. Rob felt something heavy in his chest. What about your nephew? Jacob's got a good job with Heartland already. He'll keep farming, just not as an owner. He's been working for them part-time, learning their systems. When I sell, he'll transition to full-time operator on my ground. At least the land stays in family hands that way, even if the ownership doesn't. They talked for another 10 minutes, but Rob knew Vern's mind was made up. Sometimes people just reach their limit. 47 years of farming had brought Vern to his. No amount of community support could change that. After he hung up, Rob lay in the darkness. Linda was awake beside him. You heard, Rob said. Yes, one down, maybe more to come. Rob didn't answer, because she might be right. They'd saved Isaiah's harvest. They'd saved most of Bill's. But they couldn't save everyone. The economics were too brutal, the pressure too relentless. The rain continued through Tuesday. Rob spent the day in the shop, doing maintenance, fixing small things that had broken during the intense harvest days. Michael worked on marketing plans, trying to lock in grain prices, hedge against further drops. Wednesday, the rain stopped, but the fields were saturated, standing water in the low spots, mud everywhere else. It would be days before anything could roll. Thursday morning, Rob walked his North 8, boots sinking into wet ground. The corn stood, but it looked different, ears drooping, some stalks leaning. This was the beginning of deterioration. Another week of this, and they'd have real problems. His phone rang. Isaiah. You see the forecast for next week? Isaiah asked. Another system. More rain. Rob pulled up weather on his phone. Sure enough, another low-pressure system developing. Possible precipitation Monday through Wednesday. We're running out of time, Rob said. I know, that's why I'm calling. We need to get your field done this weekend, Saturday, all of us. Isaiah, you don't owe me. This isn't about owing. This is about finishing what we started. What about Trish? Her field's too wet. Bottom ground. Won't be ready for another week minimum. Yours is high ground. It'll drain faster. And Bill's planning to finish Vern's 80 acres Saturday morning too, once we get Vern's combine running. Rob looked at the field, at corn that represented a year of work and hope in survival. Thought about 7 farmers, now down to 6 with Vern selling, coming together one more time. Saturday then, Rob said, if the ground's ready, we'll make it ready. Friday the sun came out. Temperature climbed to 70. Wind picked up, helping dry the fields. Rob walked the North 8 again in the afternoon. Ground was firmer. Still soft, but maybe workable. The combines would leave ruts, but they could harvest. Michael had already coordinated with Bill. Bill would take Vern's 9770, the one that had died Monday night. Turned out it was just a loose battery cable. Simple fix. Bill would finish Vern's 80 acres at his own place early Saturday morning, then bring both his CR 9090 and Vern's 9770 to help with Rob's field. That night, the remaining farmers gathered one last time at Isaiah's shop. 6 people now, instead of 7. The absence of Vern was felt by everyone. Vern called me today, Isaiah said. Wanted me to tell you all something. He said he's grateful for what we tried to do, and he's sorry he couldn't see it through, but he knows he's making the right choice for himself. Nobody said anything. They all understood. This was the reality of farming now. Good people making hard choices. Saturday morning, 5 combines lined up at Rob's North 8. His own S680, Isaiah's Case IH, Carl's 9650, Bill's CR 9090, and Vern's 9770, operated by Bill, the machine making one last harvest before being sold at auction. They started at first light. The formation was practice now. Everyone knew their roles. The combines moved through the field like a choreographed performance. Efficient, powerful, beautiful in its way. Rob felt something watching them work. This was the culmination of everything they tried to build. A community of farmers working together, proving it was possible, even if it wasn't sustainable. By noon, they'd covered 700 acres. The work was going even faster than Isaiah's field. No breakdowns, no drama. Just 5 machines and experienced operators working at peak efficiency. At 2 in the afternoon, they took a break. Linda brought sandwiches. Sarah came with Michael, the two of them coordinating the grain trucks. The next generation watching, learning, seeing what was possible when people chose cooperation over competition. By 6 p.m., they were down to the last 100 acres. The sun was dropping toward the horizon, painting everything golden. Rob thought about his grandfather, homesteading this land, his father, expanding it, himself trying to hold on to it, and now Michael, who would take it into the future in a form none of them could have imagined. At 7:50 p.m. Saturday night, Isaiah's Case IH harvested the last row. Rob's entire North 8, 1,400 acres, was cut, 124,000 bushels, slightly less than projected due to some quality loss from the rain, but better than he'd feared. The 5 combines gathered one last time. Rob climbed down, looked at the men who'd made this possible, farmers who'd put his needs ahead of their own schedules, who'd risked their equipment and time to help him. "How do I thank you for this?" Rob asked. Isaiah smiled, tired but genuine. "You already did. You showed up for me. For Bill. That's how this works." "You keep saying that," Rob said, "but I'm starting to wonder if that's enough. If showing up is enough when the system is designed to eliminate us anyway." "Maybe it's not about changing the system," Isaiah replied. "Maybe it's about remembering who we are despite the system, about proving to ourselves that we're more than just economic units." Bill Christensen, operating Vern's combine for its final harvest, spoke up. His voice was quiet but clear. "We can't save farming the way it used to be. That's gone. But maybe we can save the idea of it, pass that forward, let the next generation know there was another way, even if they can't practice it." They dispersed into the night, combines rolling down county roads toward home. Rob stood alone in his harvested field, stubble stretching away in every direction. The crop was safe. The farm was safe. For now. Linda was waiting at the house. She hugged him hard, held on longer than usual. "We made it," she said. "We did. All of us together." Rob nodded. Thought about Vern, already negotiating his sale. Thought about Trish, still waiting to harvest, wondering if she'd be next to sell. Thought about next year and the year after that. The struggle wasn't over. It never would be. But for tonight, they'd won. 6 farmers, working together, had defied economics and completed the harvest. And sometimes that had to be enough. The elevator in Huron was backed up on Monday morning. 20 trucks waiting to unload grain, engines idling, farmers standing around drinking coffee from thermoses, talking in the shorthand way farmers do when they're all experiencing the same thing. Rob pulled his semi into line at 8:30, number 18. He'd be here for hours. Michael had suggested they hire out the trucking, let someone else handle the logistics of moving grain from bin to elevator. But Rob preferred to do it himself, kept him connected to the crop, made the whole process feel real instead of abstract. These were kernels he'd planted, tended, harvested. He wanted to see them delivered. The man in front of him was someone Rob recognized but had never formally met. Younger, maybe 34, wearing a Heartland agricultural partner's cap and jacket. Not an owner, an employee. This had to be Jacob Kowalski, Vern's nephew. Rob had heard through the county grapevine that Jacob had been working part-time for Heartland for the past year, learning their systems while Vern decided whether to sell. Now that the sale was moving forward, Jacob was transitioning to full-time. The kid turned around, stuck out his hand. "Jacob Kowalski, you're Rob Hendricks, right?" Rob shook his hand. "That's right, you're Vern's nephew. Heard you've been with Heartland a while now." "About 14 months. Started part-time last August. Uncle Vern wanted me to learn corporate farming before he made his final decision. Said if he was going to sell, at least I'd have a job waiting." Jacob's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Goes full-time official next week when the sale closes." "How's he doing?" "Relieved, I think." and sad. 47 years on that land, and he'll walk away in an afternoon. Sign papers, take a check, be done by 3 p.m. That's how it goes sometimes. Jacob leaned against his truck. The Heartland semi, newer and bigger than Rob's aging Kenworth. Yeah, I guess, but it feels wrong, you know. That land's been in our family since 1961. Now it's just another parcel in a corporate portfolio. I'll still be farming it, but it won't be mine. I'll be a hired hand on land my uncle owned. You could have bought it, Rob said. Kept it in the family. Jacob laughed, bitter. With what? I'm 34 with student loans and a mortgage. Where am I going to get $3 million? Heartland's paying cash, closing in 2 weeks. No bank would finance me for that kind of money. Not with my balance sheet. The line moved forward one truck. They both climbed back into their cabs, inched ahead. Rob thought about the math. $3 million for Vern's 1,900 acres. That was almost $1,600 an acre. Fair market price. Maybe even a little high. Heartland was paying premium to consolidate holdings in the area. The kid was right, though. No 34-year-old had that kind of capital. The only way to farm anymore was to inherit land free and clear or have enough equity built up over generations that you could leverage it. Starting from zero was impossible. Rob's phone buzzed. Text from Linda. Bank called. Greg Morrison wants to meet. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Rob felt his stomach tighten. Bank meetings were never casual. He texted back. Did he say what about? 3 dots, appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, no, just said it's important. Rob sat in his truck, engine rumbling, watching Jacob Kowalski's Heartland semi pull forward toward the scales. Thought about what important might mean. The loan restructuring had been approved. They'd made the first payment. Harvest was 90% complete. What could Greg possibly want? Unless there was a problem Rob didn't know about yet. The meeting with Greg Morrison took place in the same conference room where they'd presented the LLC restructuring plan. But this time Greg wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, mid-40s, wearing a business suit that said she wasn't from around here. She had that polished look of corporate management. Rob, Linda, thanks for coming, Greg said. This is Jennifer Walsh from First Dakota's regional headquarters in Sioux Falls. Jennifer stood, shook hands with a grip that was firm and professional. Mr. and Mrs. Hendricks, I appreciate you making time. They all sat. Greg looked uncomfortable. The woman looked neutral, unreadable. I'll be direct, Jennifer said. The bank has been reviewing our agricultural portfolio across the region. We're seeing significant stress due to the drought. Default rates are up, collateral values are down, and our risk exposure is higher than corporate is comfortable with. Okay, Rob said slowly, but our loan is current. We restructured. We're in compliance. You are, and that's noted, but I'm here because the board is implementing a new policy. All agricultural loans over $500,000 require additional quarterly reviews, more frequent reporting, tighter oversight. Linda spoke up. That wasn't part of our restructuring agreement. It's a new policy, implemented last week, applies to all qualifying loans. So you're changing the terms after we agreed, Linda said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. We're not changing loan terms. We're changing reporting requirements. It's within the bank's rights under the agreement you signed. Rob felt something cold settle in his chest. This was how it worked. Banks didn't foreclose directly anymore. They just made requirements so onerous that eventually you couldn't comply. Then they had cause. What kind of reporting? Rob asked. Monthly financial statements, quarterly equipment appraisals, crop progress reports during growing season, marketing plans for grain sales. Basically, we need to see everything in real time. That's a lot of paperwork, Linda said. It's standard risk management, Jennifer replied. Most corporate operations already do this level of reporting. We're not a corporate operation, Rob said. We're a family farm. You're an LLC with $860,000 in debt. The bank needs to protect its position. Greg cleared his throat. Rob, Linda, I know this seems excessive, but it's coming from above me. I pushed back. The board voted 6-1 to implement. And if we don't comply, Linda asked, then technically you'd be in violation of the lending agreement, which could trigger acceleration of the note. Meaning you'd call the loan, Rob said. Meaning we'd have the option to, Jennifer said. But we'd rather work with you. Hence this meeting. We're giving all affected borrowers 60 days to get systems in place for compliance. Rob and Linda exchanged glances. 60 days. 2 months to create reporting infrastructure that would consume hours every week. Time they didn't have during planting and harvest seasons. There's something else, Jennifer continued. She pulled out another folder. Effective December 1st, all agricultural loans require personal guarantees from all LLC members. What does that mean? Michael asked. He'd been quiet until now, sitting beside his parents. It means you, your mother, and your father would all have to personally guarantee the farm's debt, Jennifer said. If the LLC defaults, the bank can come after your personal assets, retirement accounts, personal property, everything. We structured as an LLC specifically to limit personal liability, Linda said, her voice tight. I understand, but this is the new policy. We need additional security given the increased risk in the agricultural sector. Rob felt the walls closing in. They'd just gotten the farm on stable footing, restructured to survive. Now the bank was changing the rules mid-game, adding requirements that could destroy them personally if anything went wrong. When do we need to decide? Rob asked. Personal guarantee agreements need to be signed by November 15th, 3 weeks. They talked for another 30 minutes, but the message was clear. Jump through more hoops or lose the farm. Rob and Linda left the bank at 11:15, walked to their truck in silence. Finally, Linda said, "They're setting us up to fail." Maybe. No maybe about it. Nobody can comply with that level of reporting while actually farming. It's designed to be impossible. So what do? Linda started the truck. We comply. We do every damn thing they ask, and we prove them wrong. Rob looked at his wife. After 34 years, he still sometimes forgot how strong she was. Tough in ways that didn't show until they had to. That night, Michael set up new accounting systems. Cloud-based software that would track every expense in real time. Linked it to their bank accounts, their grain marketing contracts, everything. If the bank wanted transparency, they'd get it. This is going to be time-consuming, Michael said. Someone needs to input data daily. I'll do it, Linda said. I've been doing the books for 30 years. This is just more detail. It's a lot more detail, Mom. Then I'll learn. Rob watched them work, mother and son, setting up systems to satisfy bankers who wanted to find reasons to foreclose. It felt like surrender even as they fought back. His phone rang. Trish Bergstrom. Rob, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something. What's wrong? Just come over, please. He drove to Trish's place, found her standing in her kitchen, paperwork spread across the table. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. My sons called this morning. Both of them. They want me to sell. Trish, they've always wanted you to sell. This was different. They said they're worried about me, that I'm 62 years old running a farm alone, that it's too dangerous, that after the harvest delays this year, I should take it as a sign. What did you tell them? I told them I'd think about it. And Rob, I have been thinking about it. And they might be right. Rob sat down across from her. Your field is still standing. We can get it harvested. The weather's clearing. Give it a week and we'll have you cut. It's not about the harvest. It's about what comes next. Next year and the year after that. How long can I keep doing this? As long as you want to. Trish pushed the papers toward him. These are offers I got last week. After word spread about the crop damage from the rain delay, Rob looked at the documents. 2 formal offers, one from Heartland Agricultural Partners, $2.8 million. One from a private investor group out of Minnesota, $2.7 million. That's $400,000 less than they were talking before, Rob said. I know. They reassessed after seeing the lodged corn and rain damage. Called it increased risk. Heartland was at 3.2 before. Now it's 2.8. Can you negotiate? Trish shook her head. I tried. Heartland said take it or leave it. They've got other properties they're looking at. They don't need mine. And the Minnesota group dropped their offer after Heartland dropped theirs. They're not competing against each other anymore. They're colluding. What about waiting? We get your crop in, show them the yield, maybe the price comes back up. Rob, I'm tired. My sons want me to quit. The buyers are squeezing me. The crop is damaged. Maybe this is the universe telling me it's time. This is the buyers taking advantage. This is what they do. They wait until you're desperate, then lowball you. And what am I supposed to do? Hold out until I have no offers at all? Rob didn't have an answer. Because she was right. The buyers had all the leverage. They could wait. Individual farmers couldn't. Don't decide today, Rob said finally. Sleep on it. We'll get your field harvested. Then you decide with full information. Trish nodded slowly. Okay. Finish the harvest. Then I'll decide. She walked him to the door. Before he left, she said, Rob, thank you for caring, for fighting. even if it doesn't change anything. It changes something, Rob said, even if I'm not sure what. Driving home, Rob felt the weight of it all. The bank tightening requirements, Trish being lowballed, the system squeezing from every direction. They'd worked so hard to help each other, but the forces arrayed against them were too powerful. Wednesday brought good weather, clear skies, light wind, temperature in the 60s, perfect harvest conditions. Rob walked Trish's field with Isaiah and Bill. The ground had drained well enough. They could start Friday if the forecast held. But there was a problem. Trish's corn was in bad shape. The rain delay had caused eardrop, stalks leaning, significant lodging where plants had fallen completely. The combine header would struggle to pick it up. We're looking at significant loss, Isaiah said. Maybe 20, 30% won't make it into the machine. How much is the field worth? Bill asked. Rob calculated in his head. 900 acres at maybe 70 bushels per acre after losses. That's 63,000 bushels. At current prices, maybe 520,000 gross. Minus 30% loss from lodging and quality issues, maybe 360 net. After expenses, Trish would clear perhaps 280,000 from this crop. That doesn't change the math much, Rob said. Whether she sells now at 2.8 million or harvests first then sells, she's in the same position. The crop income doesn't offset what the buyers have dropped their offers. So we're doing this just to say we tried? Isaiah asked. We're doing this because Trish deserves to make her decision from a position of completion, not desperation, Rob replied. They spent Thursday preparing. Bill fabricated some modifications to his combine header, extensions that would help gather lodge corn. Carl found some parts that would allow them to run the headers closer to the ground. Every little improvement might save 5–10% of the crop. Friday morning, 4 combines gathered at Trish's field. Rob, Isaiah, Bill, and Carl. Raymond stayed back to handle maintenance on their equipment. Michael coordinated logistics. Linda came too, brought food, coffee, moral support. The work was harder than any harvest they'd done. The lodge corn tangled in the headers. Had to run slow, maybe 3 miles per hour instead of 5. The machinery struggled. Bill's CR9090 plugged twice in the first hour. Had to shut down, clear the feeder house, restart. By noon, they'd covered maybe 200 acres. At this rate, the 900-acre field would take 2 full days, maybe 3. Rob stopped to unload into the grain cart, looked at his yield monitor. 58 bushels per acre, worse than expected. The quality was poor too, lots of damaged kernels, mold starting on some ears. This is going to be rough, Rob said over the radio. We keep going, Isaiah replied. Every bushel we save is money in Trish's pocket. They worked through the afternoon. The sun beat down, temperature climbing into the 70s. Inside the combine cab, even with air conditioning, Rob was sweating. His back ached, hands cramped on the controls, 59 years old and feeling every one of them. Around 4 o'clock, Trish came out to the field in her truck. Rob saw her talking to Linda, saw Linda put her arm around Trish's shoulders. Something was wrong. Rob pulled out of the rows, shut down, climbed out, walked over to where Trish and Linda stood. What happened? Rob asked. Trish looked at him with eyes that had made a decision. Heartland called an hour ago. They're withdrawing the 2.8 offer. Why? They sent their own assessor out yesterday. He estimated the crop loss at 35 to 40%. They say the land value doesn't support their original offer. New offer is 2.5 million. That's 300,000 less than yesterday. I know. And it expires tonight at midnight. Take it or they walk. Rob felt anger rising hot in his chest. This was predatory. Heartland knew Trish was vulnerable. Knew she had a damaged crop and mounting pressure. They were using that leverage to steal $300,000 from her. Don't take it, Rob said. We'll get your crop in. Find another buyer, someone who'll deal fairly. The Minnesota group had called too. They heard about Heartland's new offer. Dropped theirs to 2.4. Rob, they're coordinating. They've decided what they're willing to pay, and they're not competing anymore. Then we find someone else. Advertise the land. There are still independent farmers out there who have cash for a $2.5 million land purchase. In this economy? Trish shook her head. I called my real estate agent. He said in the current market, with Heartland and the Minnesota group both dropping offers, he'd be lucky to find someone at 2.3, maybe 2.2. So you're going to let them steal your land? I'm 62 years old, Rob. I'm tired. My sons have been begging me to quit for 3 years. The buyers know I'm desperate and they're using it. But at 2.5 million, after paying off my equipment loans, I still net 2.3 million. That's enough to retire comfortably, to see my grandkids, to have a life that doesn't involve worrying about rain and markets and banks. Rob wanted to argue, wanted to tell her to fight, but he saw the exhaustion in her face, the weight of 3 years farming alone after her husband died, the realization that she'd already fought as hard as she could. When do you have to decide, Rob asked. Midnight tonight. Heartland wants an answer by then, or the offer expires. What about the crop? We're half done. They'll harvest it themselves after closing. It's included in the purchase price. Rob felt something break inside. They'd spent 2 days trying to save this crop for Trish. Now it would just go to Heartland. Every bushel they harvested was profit for the company that was squeezing her. Keep harvesting, Trish said quietly. Please, I want to see it finished, even if it doesn't change anything. They worked until dark, covered 600 acres total, 300 to go, but it didn't matter anymore. Trish had called Heartland at 7 p.m., accepted the $2.5 million offer. Closing would be December 15th. The combines lined up one last time as the sun set. Rob climbed down, looked at Trish standing by her truck. She walked over to him. Thank you, she said, for believing this mattered. It did matter. Did it, though? If I'm selling anyway? Yes, because we tried, because we showed up, because that's what community is supposed to do. Trish nodded, hugged him quickly. Her shoulders shook. She was crying. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry I couldn't hold on. You did hold on. For 3 years. That's more than most could do. Rob watched her drive away, stood in the darkening field. Around him, the other farmers were loading their equipment. Another operation gone. Another family farm absorbed into corporate agriculture. Linda came up beside him, put her hand on his shoulder. You can't save everyone. I know, but it doesn't make it hurt less. That night, Rob couldn't sleep. Got up at 2 a.m., went to the office, pulled out the county plat map, started marking the farms he knew were still independent. His own, Isaiah's, Carl and Raymond's, a few others scattered around. 5 years ago, this corner of the county had been 20 independent operations. Now it was down to maybe 8, and dropping. He thought about Heartland, thought about how they'd waited until Trish was desperate, then squeezed her for an extra $300,000. Thought about how they'd coordinated with the Minnesota group to eliminate competition. This was the system, efficient, ruthless, designed to consolidate. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but the number was Greg Morrison's cell. Rob, I know it's late, but I needed to call you. What is it, Greg? I'm quitting the bank. Gave my notice today. What? Going to work for a farm credit union? Smaller, local, less corporate pressure. Greg's voice was tired. I can't do this anymore, Rob. I can't be part of what's happening. What do you mean? You know what I mean. The new policies, the tightening requirements. It's all designed to force out family operations and consolidate into corporate hands. The bank makes more money that way. Bigger loans, less risk diversification. Jennifer Walsh spelled it out in a regional meeting last week. Agricultural consolidation is our strategic direction. So it's deliberate. Of course it's deliberate. Banks don't benefit from $50,000 operating loans. They benefit from $5 million corporate farm loans. Fewer clients, bigger balances, more fees. The family farm model doesn't fit their business strategy anymore. Rob felt something click into place. All the pieces, the policy changes, the personal guarantee requirements, the coordination between buyers. It wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. How many farms are they targeting, Rob asked. In this region? Maybe 40, 50. Operations with debt over 500,000. That's the threshold. Below that, you're too small to bother with. Above that, you're worth consolidating. And what about operations like mine? We're trying to comply. They'll find a reason. They always do. A missed report, an appraisal that comes in low, something. Greg paused. Rob, I'm telling you this because you need to know what you're up against. You can't win by playing their game. The rules are designed for you to lose. So what do we do? I don't know, but I couldn't keep doing my job without telling you the truth. After Greg hung up, Rob sat in the dark office, thinking, processing. Finally, he called Michael. Come to the office. We need to talk. Michael arrived in his pajamas, hair disheveled. Dad, it's 3 a.m. I know. Sit down. Rob told him everything. Greg's call, the bank's strategy, the systematic consolidation plan. Michael listened, his engineer brain processing the information. So we're not going to win by complying. Michael said finally. No, and we can't fight them legally. They've got teams of lawyers. Right. So what's option 3? Rob pulled out the calculations he'd been working on. We sell first, before they can force us. We sell enough acres to eliminate all debt. Keep what we can operate sustainably. Become too small to be worth targeting. How much would we have to sell? I've been running numbers. If we sell 1,000 acres at current market rates, 2,000 per acre, that's 2 million. Pay off all 860,000 in loans. That leaves us with 1.14 million. We invest most of it conservatively. Keep enough operating capital. Farm 1,840 acres debt-free. Michael looked at the numbers. We lose 1/3 of our operation. We keep 2/3. And we keep our freedom. No bank breathing down our neck. No personal guarantees. No reporting requirements. We operate small enough that we don't fit their consolidation model. Dad, this is admitting defeat. Number. This is strategic survival. There's a difference. They talked until dawn, worked through scenarios, ran numbers. By the time the sun came up, they had a plan. Linda found them in the office at 6:30, brought coffee, saw the spreadsheets and maps and calculations covering the desk. What's this, she asked. A way forward, Rob said. He explained everything. Greg's call, the bank's strategy, their countermove. Linda listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Which acres would we sell? She asked finally. The parcels farthest from home, the ones that are hardest to farm efficiently. We keep the core, the best ground, the home place. And we could make it work with 1,840 acres? Michael pulled up his analysis. If we operate lean, precision ag, smart marketing, no debt payments eating into cash flow, yes, it could work. Maybe not forever, but for the foreseeable future. Linda sat down, looked at her husband, at her son. This is really happening. After everything we've tried, we're still losing ground. We're losing acres, Rob said, but we're keeping the farm. There's a difference. Is there? Because it feels like they're winning. They've already won, Michael said quietly. The system is designed for consolidation. We can't change that, but we can choose how we participate. Lose everything to foreclosure, or keep what we can on our terms. Linda was quiet. Then she nodded. Who would we sell to? I've been thinking about that, Rob said. Isaiah's interested in 400 acres that border his place. Called him last night. Carl and Raymond could take 300 if the price is right. I know a couple other farmers who might want smaller parcels. We sell to neighbors. Keep the land in the community, not corporate hands. That matters, Linda said. If we have to sell, at least it's not to Heartland. They spent the next week making calls, talking to neighbors, working out deals. By the following Friday, they had commitments for 960 acres at an average of 2,000 per acre. That was 1.92 million, enough to clear all debt with cushion. The deals would close in December. By January, the Hendricks operation would be 1,840 acres, debt-free, starting over smaller. Rob called Greg Morrison, told him they wouldn't be signing personal guarantees, would instead be paying off the note in full from land sales. Greg was quiet for a moment, then he said, I'm glad you found a path forward, Rob, I really am. Are you, or are you disappointed we're not foreclosing? Rob, I've known you 12 years. I never wanted to see you fail. I'm leaving the bank specifically because I don't want to be part of this anymore. I know, and Greg, thank you for the warning. It mattered. Take care of yourself, Rob. You're one of the good ones. That Sunday, the remaining farmers gathered at Isaiah's shop. Rob, Isaiah, Carl, Raymond, and Bill. 5 men. Trish was gone, sale closing next week. Vern was gone, his sale closing the same day. 2 farms absorbed by Heartland in the same week. We need to talk about what's next, Isaiah said. What's next is we're getting picked off one by one, Carl said. Vern's gone, Trish is going, Rob's selling 1/3 of his operation. Who's next? I'm not selling, Isaiah said. Not yet anyway. Neither are we, Raymond said. Carl and I are staying in for now. Bill shifted uncomfortably. I need to tell you something. First Dakota called me Thursday. Same thing they did to Rob. New reporting requirements, personal guarantees. I can't do it. I'm 68 years old. I can't spend my last years fighting banks. The room went quiet. So you're selling? Isaiah asked. I'm taking meetings with buyers. Heartland made an approach. I haven't decided yet. Rob felt it like a punch. Another one going. The community they'd tried to save was dissolving anyway. The bank called me too, Isaiah said quietly. Same requirements. I'm thinking about my options. This is what they want, Carl said, to divide us, make us so focused on individual survival that we can't work together anymore. Maybe, Rob said, but they're not wrong about the economics. We can help each other harvest, but we can't help each other pay debts. That's individual. And if the debts are unsustainable, cooperation doesn't change that. So we just give up? Carl asked. We make the best decisions we can for our own situations, Rob replied. That's not giving up. That's surviving. The meeting ended without resolution. People left quietly. No handshakes, no plans for future gatherings. The collective effort that had started in September was fracturing in November. Driving home, Rob thought about Bill, 68 years old, 47 years farming, being forced out not by failure but by a system that had no room for him. Linda was waiting at home. She'd made dinner. They ate in silence. Finally, Rob said, Bill's selling. I figured he would. Isaiah's considering it too. Linda set down her fork. How many will be left? I don't know. Maybe just us and Isaiah and Carl and Raymond. Maybe fewer. And next year? Rob didn't answer because he didn't know. The dominoes were falling. How many more would go before it was over? His phone rang. Bill Christensen. Rob, I wanted to tell you myself before you hear it elsewhere. I accepted Heartland's offer. 3.1 million, closing December 20th. Bill, I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm relieved, actually. For the first time in 5 years, I'm not terrified of the phone ringing. I'm sleeping through the night. That's worth something. What will you do? Heartland offered me a consulting contract. Part-time equipment operator and maintenance advisor. 20 hours a week. Enough to keep me busy but not kill me. And I get to keep farming, just without the stress. So you'll still be here, in a way. Bill's voice was tired. Rob, what we did this fall, helping each other, I'll never forget that. It didn't save my farm, but it saved my dignity. And that matters more than you might think. They talked for a few more minutes. After hanging up, Rob sat at the kitchen table. Linda came to stand beside him. 3 farms gone, she said. Vern, Trish, Bill, all in 1 month. And we're selling a third of ours. But we're still here. Still farming. Rob looked up at his wife. Are we? Or are we just delaying the inevitable? Linda sat down next to him. I don't know, but I know we're not quitting today. We made a plan. We're executing it. That's all we can do. Outside, November wind moved through bare trees. The year was ending. The harvest was done. The community was fractured. But the Hendricks family was still on their land. For now, that would have to be enough. The land sales closed over the first 2 weeks of December. Isaiah bought the East 400. Carl and Raymond bought the North 320. Another farmer named Tom Peterson took the West 240. Each closing felt like cutting away a piece of Rob's soul. By December 14th, it was done. 960 acres sold. 1.92 million deposited. All loans paid in full. The Hendricks Family Farm, LLC, owned 1,840 acres free and clear. That night, Rob walked the remaining land, all 1,840 acres. Drove the section roads, stopped at each field, stood on ground that was still his. The home place, the original homestead. The core of what his grandfather had built. It was smaller, diminished, but it was theirs. No bank could take it. No corporate buyer could force them out. They'd sacrificed to keep it, but they'd kept it. Linda found him standing by the barn as the sun set. You okay, she asked. No, but I will be. We're still farming. That counts for something. Does it? Because right now it feels like we lost. We didn't lose, Rob. We survived. There's a difference. Rob put his arm around his wife. 34 years. She'd been beside him through everything. The good years and the disasters. And she was still here. Thank you, he said. For what? For not giving up on me. I married a farmer. I knew what I was signing up for. Did you, though? Linda smiled. No, but I don't regret it. They stood together in the fading light. Behind them, the farmhouse where 4 generations had lived. Ahead, a future that was uncertain but still theirs to shape. The year was ending. A year of drought and harvest and community and loss. They'd tried to save each other, had saved some, lost others. In the end, the economics had won, but they were still here. That was something. Maybe not everything they'd hoped for, but something. And sometimes, Rob thought, something was enough. The first closing happened on December 7th, 2012. Isaiah Butler bought the East 400 acres that bordered his existing operation. They met at the title company in Huron, signed papers in a conference room that smelled like coffee and old carpet. The attorney read through legal descriptions that reduced a century of family history to section numbers and GPS coordinates. Isaiah wrote a check for $800,000. Rob endorsed it over to First Dakota National, paying down debt. Just like that, land his grandfather had homesteaded changed hands. No ceremony, no acknowledgement of what it meant. Just signatures and a check. Afterwards, standing in the parking lot, Isaiah said, "I'll take care of it. Farm it right. I know you will. And if you ever want to buy it back, you get first option." Rob nodded, knew he'd never have that kind of money again, but appreciated the gesture. "You doing okay?" Isaiah asked. "Ask me in a year." They shook hands. Isaiah drove away in his truck. Rob sat in his own truck for 10 minutes, not starting the engine, just sitting. Linda reached over, took his hand. "It's just land," she said. "No, it's not." "I know." The other closings followed over the next 3 weeks. Carl and Raymond Schultz bought the North 320 acres of rolling ground that had always been harder to farm. Rob could see tension between the brothers even at the closing. They were arguing more lately, different visions for their operation, but they signed jointly, still partners, at least for now. Another farmer named Tom Peterson took the West 240, land Rob had bought in 2003 during better times. Tom was 52, still believed he could make farming work if he just added a little more ground. Rob didn't have the heart to tell him the math didn't work that way anymore. By December 28th, it was done. 960 acres sold. $1.92 million deposited and distributed to loan payoff and reserves. The Hendricks Family Farm, LLC, owned 1,840 acres free and clear. No debt, no bank breathing down their neck. No personal guarantees hanging over their future. They should have felt relief. Instead, Rob felt hollow. New Year's Eve, they had dinner at home. Just the three of them. Linda made pot roast, same as always. They didn't talk about the farm, talked about anything else. The weather, news, Michael's old college friends, anything to avoid the subject that filled the room anyway. At midnight, they watched the ball drop on television. 2013 arrived. A new year, a new start. Rob went to bed feeling older than his 59 years. January brought cold, temperatures below zero for days at a time, the kind of cold that made metal brittle and diesel gel in fuel tanks. Rob spent most of the month in the shop, doing maintenance on equipment. The S680 needed work. Bearings replaced, belts changed, software updated. He worked alone, radio playing classic country, losing himself in mechanical problems that had clear solutions. Michael was busy with the business side, marketing grain from bins, negotiating contracts for seed and fertilizer, analyzing data on crop yields and soil health. He'd turned the spare bedroom into an office, walls covered with maps and charts and printouts. The farm was becoming what he'd envisioned, a modern data-driven operation. But it was also becoming something else, smaller, more cautious, less willing to take risks. Linda managed the new accounting systems. Even though the bank no longer required detailed reporting since they were debt-free, she kept the discipline anyway. Said it was good practice. Rob suspected she just needed the structure, the certainty of numbers that added up correctly. They were surviving, but something had been lost that none of them could name. February brought a letter from Bill Christensen. He'd moved to town, small house on Elm Street in Huron. The letter was handwritten on plain paper, Bill's rough script covering 2 pages. "Rob," it read, "I wanted to thank you for what you tried to do, for believing we could help each other. It didn't save my farm, but it saved my dignity. I got to choose how it ended instead of having it chosen for me. That matters more than you might think. I'm working part-time now at the John Deere dealership, 20 hours a week, equipment consulting and service advising. Turns out 47 years of farming makes you pretty good at understanding machinery. Pays not much, but it's steady, and I sleep better now. No more 3 a.m. panic about weather or markets or banks. I don't regret farming, but I also don't regret stopping. Maybe that's what getting old means, understanding when to quit. Take care of yourself, take care of that land, and tell Michael he's lucky to have a father who cares more about people than profit. Your friend Bill." Rob read the letter twice, put it in his desk drawer with other important papers. Letters from his father, the deed to the original homestead, things that mattered even if they had no monetary value. March came with false spring, temperatures in the 60s, snow melting, mud everywhere. Too early to work ground, but late enough to start planting. Michael had spreadsheets ready, seed selections based on soil types and yield data, fertilizer plans optimized for efficiency, every decision backed by numbers and analysis. It was smart farming, modern farming, but Rob missed the intuition, the feel of walking a field and knowing what it needed, the art that existed before everything became science. They planted in late April, 1,840 acres of corn and soybeans. The equipment ran smoothly, no breakdowns, no crisis. It was almost boring in its efficiency. Isaiah stopped by one evening in May. They sat on the porch, watching the sun set over fields that used to be Rob's, but were now Isaiah's. The corn was emerging, tiny green shoots in endless rows. "How's it feel?" Isaiah asked. "Farming less ground?" "Different. Quieter." "Good quiet or bad quiet?" Rob thought about it. "Both maybe. Less stress, but also less purpose." "I hear you. I'm farming 5,400 acres now. Added your 400 plus some ground. Bill was leasing, plus Trish's 900. Got it all from Heartland on a lease agreement. It's more than I can really handle solo. But the economics only work at scale." "You sound stretched." "I am. Running myself ragged, actually." Isaiah looked tired in the fading light, thinking about cutting back. Maybe leasing some of it out, or finding a partner. "What about hiring help?" "Can't afford it. Margins are too tight. Either I do it myself or I don't do it at all." "That's not sustainable," Rob said. "I know, but I don't know what else to do." They sat in silence for a while, two farmers watching darkness come. Then Isaiah stood, shook Rob's hand, drove away. Rob sat alone on the porch until Linda came out to tell him dinner was ready. Summer was dry, not drought, but drier than average. The corn suffered some, but not like last year. Yields would be okay. Not great, but okay. Michael's careful management was paying off. Precision application of water and nutrients, variable rate seeding, every acre optimized. In July, Rob got a call from Trish Bergstrom. She was living in town now, small condo near the hospital. Said she'd sold most of her furniture, didn't need it, was traveling some, had been to Arizona and was planning a trip to see her grandkids in Oregon. "I just wanted to check on you," Trish said. "See how you're doing." "We're making it. Farming fewer acres, no debt. It's different but manageable." "Do you regret it? Helping everyone last fall?" Rob looked out the kitchen window at fields that stretched to the horizon. Some his, some not. "Every day, you mean?" Trish laughed. Sad but genuine. "Yeah, every day. Some days yes, some days no. Mostly I just miss how it used to be, before everything got so complicated." "Me too, but Rob, I don't regret selling. I sleep through the night now. I don't wake up worried about weather or equipment or money. That's worth something." "It is, but I also know what we lost. Not just the land, the community, the idea that neighbors could save each other. We proved it's possible, just not sustainable." "Maybe that's enough," Rob said, "knowing it's possible." "Maybe." After they hung up, Rob sat at the kitchen table, thought about all the people who'd been part of last fall's harvest. Vern, retired now, living comfortably on his Heartland buyout money. Bill, working at the dealership, sleeping through the night. Trish, traveling to see grandkids. And the community they'd briefly built, now scattered. Harvest 2013 came in September. Yields were 95 bushels per acre on corn, 48 on soybeans. Not spectacular, but profitable. Rob ran his S680 alone mostly, Michael helping when he could. They didn't need extra labor for 1,840 acres. One man could handle it. The work was efficient, methodical. Rob covered maybe 200 acres a day. In 2 weeks, he was done. No drama, no crisis, no community gathering to help. It was lonely. October brought the final accounting. After all expenses, the operation netted $320,000. Divided according to LLC ownership. Rob got 160, Linda 96, Michael 64. Add in their salaries and they'd each made decent money. The farm was successful by any objective measure. Profitable, sustainable, well managed. So why did Rob feel like he'd failed? Thanksgiving 2013, Michael brought a guest. Sarah, a woman he'd been dating. She worked in agriculture, technology, helped farmers implement precision systems. Smart, capable, understood farming in the modern context. Over dinner, she talked about the future of agriculture. Drones and sensors and artificial intelligence. Farms managed by algorithms. Maximum efficiency. It all made sense. Rob nodded in the right places. But he also felt like she was describing something he didn't recognize. This wasn't farming as he knew it. This was industrial food production that happened to use land. After dinner, Michael and Sarah went for a walk. Rob helped Linda with dishes. She seems nice, Linda said. She does. You don't like her. I like her fine. I just don't understand the world she's describing. It's the world Michael lives in, the world he's building here. I know. Linda dried a plate, set it in the cabinet. Rob, we have to let it go. The old way, it's gone. Holding on to it just makes us bitter. I'm not bitter. Yes, you are. You're angry that helping people didn't change the economics. That community wasn't enough, that the system won anyway. Rob stopped washing, looked at his wife. She was right. He was angry. Had been since December. Maybe since the drought started. I don't know how to let it go, he said. Neither do I, but we have to try. For Michael's sake. For our own. They finished the dishes in silence. Through the window, Rob could see Michael and Sarah walking between the barn and the shop, talking and laughing. Young love. A future being built. He was happy for his son and sad for himself. Both things were true. Winter 2013 into 14 was hard. Polar vortex, they called it on the news. Temperatures 30, 40 below zero. Livestock dying, diesel freezing. Old farmers getting hypothermia checking on animals. Rob spent weeks in the house. Couldn't work outside in that cold. Read books, watched television, felt useless. Linda went to work at the hospital 3 days a week, had taken a part-time position to stay busy. Michael worked in his office, managing the farm digitally. January 20th, 2014, Rob got a call from Raymond Schultz. Carl's in the hospital. Heart attack. Is he okay? He's alive. But it was close. Doctors say he needs to reduce stress. Stop working so hard. How's that going to happen? You guys are farming 4,800 acres. We're not anymore. We're selling back to family size, maybe 2,400 each. Run separate operations. The partnership is over. After 31 years together, Carl's wife gave him an ultimatum. Slow down or she's leaving. And Raymond, I can't watch my brother kill himself trying to farm too much ground. We're done partnering. Rob visited Carl in the hospital, found him in a bed, hooked to monitors, looking diminished. The brothers had already decided to split everything. Divide the land, divide the equipment, end the partnership. 31 years of working together, finished. We got too big, Carl said quietly. Chase scale. It nearly killed me. Literally. You're going to be okay, Rob said, this time. But the doctor was clear. Keep farming like I have been. Next heart attack will be the last one. So you're cutting back. We both are. Raymond and I will each farm half what we did together. 2,400 acres solo. Make less money. But maybe I'll live to retire. What about Raymond? How's he taking it? Better than me. He never wanted to expand in the first place. I pushed it. Convinced him we needed scale. Nearly killed us both in different ways. After leaving the hospital, Rob drove around the county. Looked at farms he'd known his whole life. So many were different now. Sold to Heartland or other corporate operations. Big green signs marking corporate ownership. Houses empty, buildings deteriorating. Land being farmed by people who lived 2 counties over. The community was dissolving. Not dramatically, just steadily. One farm at a time. Spring 2014, Michael announced his engagement to Sarah. They were planning a June wedding. Small ceremony, family and close friends. Rob was happy for them, genuinely. But he also knew what it meant. Michael would have a wife, eventually kids, roots in the operation. He wouldn't leave. The farm would continue into the next generation. That should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like continuation. The farm would survive, but in a form Rob barely recognized. The wedding was beautiful. Simple ceremony in the Presbyterian church in Huron. Reception at the community center. Farmers and townspeople mixing, celebrating. For one day, everything felt possible again. Linda cried during the ceremony. Happy tears, she said. Rob held her hand, thought about their own wedding 35 years ago. How young they'd been. How different farming was then. During the reception, Isaiah pulled Rob aside. I wanted to tell you something. I'm thinking about retirement. You're 53, I know, but I'm farming 5,400 acres solo. It's breaking me. I can't sustain it. So what are you thinking? Sell half, keep 2,700, operate sustainably. Maybe find a young farmer to lease the other half to. Someone who wants to start small. That makes sense. Does it? Or am I just admitting defeat like everyone else? Rob watched Michael and Sarah dancing, young and full of hope. Then he looked at Isaiah, tired, worn down, trying to survive in a system designed for different economics. We're all just trying to make the best decisions we can, Rob said. There's no shame in that. Isn't there? We let them win. The banks, the corporate farms, the system. We fought for one harvest season and then gave up. We didn't give up. We adapted. Isaiah smiled. Sad. That's a nice way to put it. 2 years passed. 2014 became 15, became 16. The farm operated smoothly. Michael managed it with increasing independence. Rob did field work but let his son make most decisions. It was Michael's operation now in everything but name. The yields were good, profits stable. The LLC accumulated equity. On paper, they were successful, but the county kept changing. More farms sold, more consolidation. The school in Bartlett closed, not enough kids. The grocery store followed, then the hardware store, small towns dying as farms disappeared. Rob watched it happen, felt powerless to stop it. This was the cost of efficiency, of scale, of modern agriculture. Communities sacrificed for productivity. In March 2016, Linda came home from the hospital with news. I'm retiring, end of the year. You're only 60. I'm tired, Rob. And I want to do something else while I still can. Travel, see things, not spend every day worrying about reports and regulations and compliance. What will you do? I don't know yet, but I need to find out. Rob understood. He'd have been feeling it too, the need for something different. But farming was all he knew. That summer, he started going to auctions, farm equipment sales, watched combines and tractors sell for pennies on the dollar, saw lives of work liquidated in an afternoon. It was depressing, but he couldn't stop going. At one auction in August, he saw Vern Kowalski. Vern was there with Jacob, his nephew, who was now a full-time Heartland operator. They were looking at a grain cart. Rob, Vern said, shaking hands. Good to see you. You too. What brings you here? Just browsing. Old habits. How's retirement? Good. Really good. I travel with my wife. We went to Alaska last month. Saw grizzly bears and glaciers. Never would have done that while farming. Any regrets? Vern thought about it. Some. I miss the work sometimes. The satisfaction of a good harvest. But I don't miss the stress, the constant worry, and seeing Jacob still farming the land, even if he's working for Heartland, that helps. The ground's still being cared for. They talked for a while, then Vern said something that stayed with Rob. You know what I realized? We spent our whole lives building something. Our farms, our operations, our legacies. But we built them in a system that was changing underneath us. And when the change was complete, what we built didn't fit anymore. So what do? We let go. We move on. We find new things to build. Easy to say, Rob replied. Hard to do, I know. Driving home from the auction, Rob thought about Vern's words, about building things in a changing system, about letting go. He wasn't ready, not yet. December 2016. Rob turned 63. Linda threw a party. Small gathering. Family and a few friends. Michael and Sarah were there. Sarah now 7 months pregnant with their first child. Isaiah came. Carl and Raymond showed up separately, the brothers barely speaking to each other since their split. A few others. Over cake, people told stories. Remembered the harvest of 2012, the combines gathering at dawn, the community effort, the belief that neighbors could save each other. It felt like ancient history, 4 years, but it might as well have been 40. Later, after everyone left, Rob sat with Linda and Michael, 3 generations around the kitchen table. I've been thinking, Rob said, about the future, about when I should step back. You don't have to decide that now, Michael said. I'm 63. Your grandfather retired at 65. Maybe that's a good target. What would you do? Linda asked. I don't know, but I think Michael should run things. Make it official. This is his farm now. Dad, it's our farm. No, it's yours. I'm just the old guy who doesn't understand drones and algorithms and precision agriculture. You're the future. I'm the past. You're not the past, Michael said. You're the foundation everything else is built on. Rob smiled, appreciated the sentiment, but knew it wasn't quite true. January 2017 brought a surprise. Greg Morrison called, asked to meet for lunch. Rob agreed, curious. They met at the cafe in Huron, ordered sandwiches, made small talk. Finally, Greg said, I wanted to update you. I'm at the Farm Credit Union now. We're trying to do things differently. Support family operations instead of pushing consolidation. How's that going? Slow, but we're making progress. We've helped 3 operations restructure this year. Kept them farming. That's good. It is, but Rob, I also wanted to say I'm sorry for being part of what happened at First Dakota, for implementing policies I knew would hurt people. You were doing your job. Greg set down his coffee cup. Was I? Or was I choosing a paycheck over principle? I think about guys like you, Bill Christensen, Vern Kowalski, good farmers forced into impossible choices, and I helped make it happen. You gave us options when you could, but in the end, the outcome was the same. Fewer farmers, more consolidation. The system got what it wanted, and I was part of that system. You left, Rob said. That counts for something. Does it? The damage was already done. They finished lunch, shook hands in the parking lot. Rob watched Greg drive away, thought about all the people caught in systems bigger than themselves, bankers and farmers alike, everyone just trying to do their jobs while the world changed around them. Spring 2017, Rob planted what he knew would be his second to last crop. Told himself he'd farm through 2018, then retire at 65, give Michael full control. The planting went smoothly. Michael had the operation running like a machine, every seed placed precisely, every input calculated. It was impressive. But Rob missed the chaos, the uncertainty, the feel of gambling with weather and hoping for the best. Modern farming had eliminated risk, and in doing so, eliminated something essential. In June, Sarah gave birth to a daughter, Emma, 8 pounds, healthy, perfect. Rob held his granddaughter in the hospital, looked at her tiny face, and thought about what kind of world she'd inherit. July brought a letter from Trish Bergstrom. She was getting remarried, a man she'd met traveling. They were moving to Colorado, starting fresh. I wanted you to know, the letter said, that selling the farm was the best decision I ever made. Not because I didn't love farming, but because it let me discover who I am outside of it. I was a farmer's wife, then a widow trying to keep her husband's dream alive. Now I'm just Trish, finding out what that means. I hope you find peace too, Rob. You gave so much trying to save all of us. Don't forget to save yourself. Rob read the letter on the porch. Linda sat beside him. She sounds happy, Linda said. She does. Are you happy? Rob thought about it. Honestly, I don't know. I'm grateful. I'm secure. But happy? I'm not sure I know what that means anymore. Linda took his hand. We survived, Rob. Our farm, our family, our marriage. That's something. Is it enough? It has to be. Harvest 2017 was routine. Good yields. No drama. Rob ran the combine, listened to the radio, thought about everything that had changed. In 5 years, the county had lost 60 farms, 60 operations gone, 60 families ended or moved or absorbed. The Hendricks farm had survived, at a cost, smaller, changed, adapted, but survived. October 2017. Rob's phone rang, number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. It was Bill Christensen. Rob, I need to tell you something. I'm sick. Cancer, darted in my lungs, spread to liver. Doctors give me maybe 6 months. Bill, I'm so sorry. Don't be. I'm 69. Had a good run. But I wanted to call to say thank you for what you tried to do back in 12, for believing we mattered. You did matter. You do matter. The farm's gone. I'm dying. But you know what? I don't regret any of it. The farming, the fighting, even the losing. It was a good life, Rob. Don't let anyone tell you different. I won't. And Rob, when your time comes to let go, do it. Don't hold on so hard it destroys what's left. Learn from old men like me. They talked for another hour about crops and equipment and weather, about wives and children and the passage of time. When they hung up, Rob sat in his office for a long while. Bill Christensen died on February 3rd, 2018. The funeral was at the Lutheran Church in Huron. 200 people attended, old farmers mostly, men who remembered when the county had been different. Rob gave a eulogy, talked about Bill's dedication, his generosity, the harvest of 2012 when Bill pushed his equipment past breaking to help neighbors. The crowd nodded. They remembered. After the funeral, Rob stood in the church parking lot, looked at the old farmers around him, saw their ages, 65, 70, 75. Realized that in another 20 years, most would be gone. And with them, the memory of how farming used to be. Spring 2018, Rob's last planting season. Michael did most of the work. Rob helped, but increasingly felt like he was in the way. This was Michael's operation now. His vision, his future. The farm was thriving under Michael's management. Efficient, profitable, modern. Everything Rob's generation had failed to achieve. But it was also something else. Corporate in feel, data-driven, disconnected from the land in ways Rob couldn't articulate but felt deeply. In June, they made it official. Rob stepped back from active management, took the title of consultant. Michael became CEO of Hendricks Family Farm, LLC. Linda had already retired. It was the next generation's operation now. Rob tried to stay busy, fixed equipment, helped with harvest, but mostly he felt obsolete, a relic of a farming era that no longer existed. One evening in August, he drove the county roads, looked at land he'd once owned. Isaiah's fields were well maintained. Carl's too. Raymond was farming his 2,400 acres conservatively and sustainably. Rob had heard, happier solo than he'd ever been in partnership. The ground was being cared for. Crops looked good, but it wasn't the same. The land was just land now, not the Hendricks family farm, not his grandfather's homestead, just parcels in someone else's operation. He ended up at Vern's old place, now Heartland property. 8,000 acres consolidated under corporate management. No one living on the home place. House boarded up, barn collapsing, equipment stored at a regional facility 30 miles away. This was the future, efficient, profitable, empty. Rob sat in his truck as the sun set, thought about everything that had happened since the drought of 2012. The community harvest, the land sales, the retirements and deaths, the slow dissolution of the world he'd known. They'd survived, but what had they saved? The farm still existed. The Hendricks name was still on it. Michael would continue farming, probably successfully. Sarah was pregnant again, their second child, the next generation. But the community was gone. The neighbors who'd showed up at dawn with combines, the belief that people could save each other through cooperation. That was lost, not because they hadn't tried, but because the system had no room for it. Rob started his truck, drove home. Linda was waiting with dinner. They ate quietly, talked about small things, avoided the big questions. Later in bed, Linda asked, "Do you regret it? The whole thing?" Rob thought about it, all of it. The drought, the harvest, the choices, the consequences. "No," he said finally. "We did what we thought was right. It didn't change the world, but it changed us, and that matters." "Does it?" "I have to believe it does." Linda rolled toward him, put her head on his shoulder. 37 years of marriage. They'd weathered everything together. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Outside, the August wind moved through corn that was no longer entirely theirs, but was still in some way home. 5 years later, 2023, Rob was 69, Linda was 67, fully retired now, spent his days reading, working in the garden, occasionally helping Michael during busy seasons. The farm was doing very well. Michael had expanded back to 2,200 acres through careful leasing. Sarah managed the technology side. They had 2 children now, Emma at 8 and Jack at 6, the next generation. Rob watched them sometimes. The kids riding in the tractor cab with Michael, learning the land, connecting to something bigger than themselves. Maybe the cycle would continue. Maybe farming had a future in their hands. Or maybe they'd be the last, the final generation before full corporate consolidation. Time would tell. In November 2023, Rob got a call from Isaiah Butler. They hadn't talked in over a year. "Rob, I need to tell you something. I'm selling most of my operation. Not to Heartland, though, to a young farmer. 28 years old, name's Tyler Jensen. Wants to start small, build slow. I'm selling him 1,200 acres for less than market value, giving him a chance I never had." "That's good, Isaiah. Really good. I've been thinking about 2012, about what we tried to do, and I realized something. We couldn't save the system, but maybe we could save the idea. Pass it forward." "How do you mean?" "This kid, Tyler, he wants to farm the old way. Community-focused, sustainable, small enough to know every acre. I'm selling to him because someone needs to remember how it used to be, how it could be again." Rob felt something warm in his chest, hope maybe, or its distant cousin. "That matters, Isaiah, more than you know. I learned it from you, from that fall when we all showed up for each other. It didn't save our farms, but it showed what's possible. And if Tyler carries that forward, passes it to the next person, maybe the idea survives even when we don't." They talked for another hour about the past and future, about what farming meant and what it could mean. When they hung up, Rob sat in his office looking at old photos on the wall, pictures of the harvest of 2012, combines lined up at dawn, farmers working together. It had been 11 years, a lifetime ago, and yesterday. Linda came in, found him looking at the photos. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just remembering. Was it worth it?" Rob thought about the question, really thought about it. The land they'd lost, the community that had dissolved, the way of life that had ended, but also the people they'd helped, the effort they'd made, the belief they'd held, however briefly, that cooperation mattered more than competition. "Yes," he said, "it was worth it. Because we tried, because we showed up, because for one season, we proved that the old way could still work, even if it couldn't last. And now someone like Tyler gets a chance to try again. That's worth something." Linda nodded, stood beside him, looking at the photos. "I'm proud of us," she said, "of what we did, what we survived." "Me too." They stood together in the fading afternoon light. Outside, Michael's kids were playing in the yard. Emma was teaching Jack how to identify different types of soil, the future unfolding in real time. The Hendricks farm would continue, smaller than it had been, different than Rob's father had run it, unrecognizable from his grandfather's homestead, but continuing nonetheless. And maybe that was enough. Maybe survival itself in a system designed to eliminate you was a kind of victory. Rob turned off the office light, took Linda's hand. Together they walked to the kitchen where dinner was waiting. Behind them the photos remained, silent witnesses to a moment when 7 farmers had believed that community could overcome economics. When combines had gathered at dawn, when neighbors had saved neighbors. It hadn't changed the system, but it had changed them. And through Isaiah's sale to Tyler, maybe the idea would continue. A young farmer starting small, carrying forward the belief that another way was possible. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along. Outside, the November sun set over fields that held the work of 4 generations. Land that had seen homesteading and depression and drought and consolidation. Land that had survived it all, even as the people who worked it changed. The land would remain, long after Rob and his generation were gone, long after the combines and the community and the old ways were forgotten. But the idea might survive too, passed forward, remembered, kept alive by people who believed it mattered. The land would remain, and so would the memory of what had been tried. That would have to be enough. And it was.